Workers affiliated to NUMSA yesterday staged a picket over a wage dispute. The union is demanding a revised 9% increase in guaranteed bonuses, among other things. NUMSA's national spokesperson Pagamile Hlubi Majola says they've been open to engagement.
This opportunity gives us a chance to hopefully deal with some of the other demands so that we can resolve this strike. The other demands that we have to surface are the issues around the bonuses. Bonuses are a reflection of the performance of the company. Gautrain would not be able to reach any type of performance without ordinary workers, certainly the blue-collar workers who are actually responsible for the performance of the Gautrain. So it is our view that if the bonus is a guaranteed bonus, then it's a bonus that must be paid to everyone.
Further afield, and finally, US President Joe Biden has insisted he's firmly committed to staying in the race for a second term and to beating Republican rival Donald Trump in November's elections. Biden made the comments in a letter he sent to congressional Democrats after growing concern about his prospects after a poor showing in a recent debate against Trump. Showan Bryce Peace reports from New York.
In his letter to Democratic lawmakers, Biden said he'd heard the concerns about what was at stake in this election and that he knew better than anyone the responsibility and the burden the nominee of the Democratic Party carried into November's election. He reminded members of his party that their nomination process mattered and that voters had spoken clearly and decisively in supporting his candidacy ahead of his formal nomination that will take place at the Democratic National Convention in August. Biden's letter warned members of his party that they had one job, and that was to beat Donald Trump, and that any weakening of resolve or lack of clarity about the task ahead only helped Trump, as he urged members to come together and move forward as a united party.
Recapping the top story, the Western Cape Education Department has confirmed the reopening of schools today amid damage caused by heavy rain and strong winds to some facilities. For SFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM Sports headlines, it's rugby. We're building up to the Springboks as they're eyeing a sharper breakdown to spark their attack against Ireland this weekend. And in tennis, Wimbledon action, Novak Djokovic criticizes the crowd, accusing them of using a chant to boo him during his victory last night. All this and more just before 6:30.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, the warnings from the traffic desk this morning changing very much from snow and sleet that we saw yesterday to very much the dangers of a storm surge on the coastal routes. There is a warning of storm surges that extends right through today until midnight tonight from Saldanha Bay on the Western Cape area, right through Cape Metropole, up the Southern Cape, and then through to Gqeberha and Nelson Mandela Bay as well. We saw first the lashings of that storm surge hit Bikini Beach in Gordons Bay yesterday. We also saw the sea coming up over Baden-Powell Drive along the coast between Muizenberg and Strandfontein, depositing kelp and other sea debris as well. So if you take any coastal route that really hugs the coast, just pay attention to that. Probably a good idea to stay away from the very, very dangerous conditions. Apart from that, it's back to school today, so there'll be some extra traffic volumes for sure, where there hasn't been for a few weeks. And Cape Town, just an update if you're around the Royals Gordons Bay area, R44 remains closed due to yesterday's truck crash. It's likely that it may open around 9 o'clock this morning, but in the meantime, you'll have to backtrack from Royals and Pringle Bay down through Kleinmont, up through Bottrafia, Grabo and Sir Larry's Pass. It'll be the long way round using the N2 route. I'm Rob Byrne. SAFM Sunrise starts now.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
Brrr is really the only word that I have for you. Good morning. Welcome to SFM. Welcome to SFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. It is cold. It is the cold. I said yesterday it was the coldest day of the year. Today is the coldest day of the year. And, you know, some people may sort of make light of it, the situation in the Western Cape. You heard about the storm surge warning there from Rob Byrne. Very, very serious. But certainly very, very cold. I've got -4 in Joburg, -6 in Vereeniging, -8 in Vryburg. I was thinking the coldest I think I've ever been is -20, and that was in Switzerland. I've asked on Twitter this morning, where's the coldest place you've ever been? Might well have been, I know, some parts of the Free State, some parts of the Eastern Eastern Cape had snow yesterday. You might well have been in one of those, driving through, moving through that area, but very, very cold in many, many places. And of course, the big focus for the moment is not so much on the cold, but on the storm surges, the rain, the very wet weather, also cold in Cape Town. I think that's a big focus as well. 29 schools damaged by the bad weather that we've already seen. We'll hear more details about it, speak to more people about what is happening there, and just find out a bit more about the impact, having a huge impact on people at the moment. But the story of the week for the moment certainly is the weather and how cold it's been. And there's usually 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 very cold weeks like this. I must just say, it seems to me, as we're in the second week of July, that's actually a little later this year than it is normally. Hard to kind of know, and winters are different and summers are different, but it seems to me a little later this year. I can tell you this is, I think, only the second time I've spoken to you with a beanie on my head. And maybe I'll overheat in a little while and I'll take it off, but it sort of goes head, hair, beanie, headphones. Yes, hair. Thank you for that. Just very cold, very much the story of the morning. And just watch out, as Rob says, watch out for those storm surges, that depending on where you are at the moment. While all of that is happening, there are felt fires in Mopani, in Limpopo, also in Queensmead, in KwaZulu-Natal, and I understand in some farming areas of the Free State. We'll hear more about that as we go through the show at the moment, so you do get these sort of extremes. Another big story at the moment, I think electricity, despite the fact we're now on, day 104 of no load shedding, is still a big story. And Kgosientsho Ramakgopa had one of those big press conferences. He's now the Minister of Energy and Electricity, and I think he can speak with a bit more freedom, maybe authority is a better word, because he's now the Minister of Energy and Electricity. And he said that we will lead the continent in terms of renewable energy. He said he wanted to be ultra aggressive when it came to renewable energy. The amount of renewable energy will change exponentially. And he said that maybe we had been, I think he was quite careful, maybe we had been a bit slow in implementing renewable energy. And I wondered if maybe the current Minister of Mineral Resources, Gwede Mantashe, used to have the energy portfolio as well, was sort of watching that and going, wouldn't pick a fight with Gwede Mantashe. On the other hand, the truth is the truth. So very interesting to see how this is playing out. But he also said, Ramakgopa now, also said that the cost of power, the rate at which the price that you're paying for electricity has changed, has increased, is unsustainable. The situation was untenable, he said. He's really talking about the cost that you're paying. I thought that was a very important and a very interesting comment. Also denying that Eskom was using more diesel this year. And all the facts and figures that I've seen suggest that Eskom did use more diesel last year than they did this year. And there'll be more details to come around all of that. But still, load reduction, I think, is going to be the big story. For millions of people, they're still living really with a different form of load shedding. I see now that a group of organizations, including Freedom Under Law, Judges Matter, KSAC and others, they've now said to Parliament, they sort of formally objected to the idea that Dr. John Hlophe could now be on the Judicial Service Commission. He was the first judge in our democratic history to be impeached, you may remember. And now it looks like Umkhonto weSizwe, his political party, is nominating him to go to the Judicial Service Commission. I suppose the argument would be that why should someone who's been impeached as a judge have a role in selecting judges? And I can just see court cases loading in many, many different directions. And the African Transformation Movement, they've lodged their own claim that the election was rigged, suggesting that the election should be reheld. I haven't seen their evidence at this stage, I must just say. The Electoral Court has said all of the parties involved, so all of the parties in Parliament, I think, are respondents because they sort of won the election, if you see what I mean. They're all players in this. They all have representation. They all won votes. They all get to object, but it's really the Electoral Commission, and I think they'll want to see ATM's evidence. And Umkhonto weSizwe MK had lodged its own case and then withdrawn it. It says it still has evidence, but as yet has not provided any. I think the ATM's case is slightly different. They will have said why we believe X, Y, and Z. The MK has not done that, and I think that's very important. A series of conversations coming out of the Public Service Commission yesterday. They said civil servants must support the elected government, even if Officials come from one party or belong to one party or have an affinity with one party, and the minister they now serve comes from a different party in the coalition government. Also saying that you cannot just replace or remove directors general willy-nilly. You can't just, if a minister doesn't like a new minister from a different party comes and doesn't like the director general, can't just remove them. They must serve their term of 5 years. And I think this is going to be one of the key tensions is, the relationship between ministers and directors general. I think it's also going to start a debate on the plural of director general. You tell me. My understanding is that the plural is directors general. That's what I was taught at school. Maybe it's director generals. And I know that English as a language does change. I'm not one of those people who says it is this and therefore can never change. French does that. Icelandic does that. English doesn't. And so, I don't know if you know. Maybe you know better. Maybe you've been teaching English for many years. We have one or two. Don't we have one or two regular listeners who've taught English for many years? I think we do. And maybe they could just help us out on this. Is it director generals or directors general? I'm going with directors general for the moment. Good to have you along. I must just warn you, my brain is moving very slowly this morning. Maybe I'll take the beanie off because it's overheating. 086 000 2032, SMS 41391. You tweet SFM Radio. And at Stephen Grootes, send your WhatsApp voice notes to 0614 104 107. Good morning. Brr.
In South Africa, 1 in 5 children under the age of 13 is overweight or obese. Sign a petition to demand strong warning labels on unhealthy packaged food. And don't forget to catch the next episode of Chew on This at healer.org on Thursday, 27 June from 3 p.m. Young people tell us how big food companies are feeding them lies.
And we will buy 500 cars, and we will buy 500 more. Just to be the one who buys your car, will come to you and offer more. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da. We buy cars, we buy cars. Da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-dun-da-da-da.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
EFC is live this Thursday. One of the greatest mixed martial artists of Africa returns to the World Sports Betting Arena. Iga Smiley Kabesa has cemented his legacy in the record books as the Continental GOAT. Now he puts his lightweight title on the line against Humphrey King Cobra Malinga. EFC 115 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel and DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
The Daily News Diary on SAFM.
And Musa, good morning. Are you wearing a beanie? I've just taken mine off because my brain was overheating.
Good morning, Stephen. Yes, I am. Oh, gosh, it's cold.
No, it's ridiculous. It's utterly ridiculous. All right, well, apart from that, what else is happening today?
Well, schools reopening today, amid the cold weather. Confirmation as well from the Western Cape that schools in the province, they will reopen despite the severe weather conditions. Yesterday, damage assessments started with this after the several intense cold fronts that made landfall over the weekend, and also preparing for another cold front that's due to make landfall today. There has been concerns raised over the effects of the extreme weather conditions that's on people living in informal settlements, and the NGO, the Development Action Group, saying they've reached out to ministers to actually make suggestions on how to improve the living conditions of the most vulnerable. In Gauteng, the MEC for Education, Sports, Arts, Culture and Recreation, Matome Chulwane, will today officially announce the start for the 2025 online admissions for Grade 1 and Grade 8, as well as outline the application and placement process. Members of both Houses of Parliament, being the National Council of Provinces and the National Assembly, electing office bearers of their respective houses, as well as receiving departmental briefings on budget votes. The National Council of Provinces will consider the nomination of members to serve on the Judicial Service Commission, the SADC Parliamentary Forum, as well as the Magistrates Commission. In court, the former Speaker of the National Assembly, Nosiviwe Mapisa Nqakula's corruption case returns to the Pretoria Magistrates Court, and she is appearing on charges related to alleged corruption during her tenure as Minister of Defence and facing 12 counts of corruption and 1 of money laundering. The Electoral Court in Bloemfontein has also set a deadline for tomorrow for political parties to actually respond to the ATM's legal challenge, and that was seeking to nullify the May general elections. And lastly, today, day 2 of the Southern African Transport Conference, the Transport Minister, Barbara Creecy, delivered the opening address yesterday, saying an efficient and functioning transport sector is key to a successful economy.
Yep, she is, of course, correct. Lots of work to do there. And Musab, thank you very much indeed. 19 minutes after 6.
Stephen Grootes on SAFM.
Well, I've got to tell you that there's a full page of weather warnings from the Weather Service this morning, and particularly orange level 6 warnings: disruptive rain, possible flooding, landslides in the city of Cape Town, Drakensberg and Stellenbosch municipalities. Other warnings over the Cape Winelands, parts of the Overberg district, parts of the central area of the Eastern Cape. That's for damaging winds, by the way. Lots of concerns around the area between Plettenberg Bay and Port Edward. That could lead to disruptions in ports. I think if you don't need to go to sea, don't. Damaging waves expected between Table Bay and Struisbaai. All sorts of concerns also between Plettenberg Bay and East London. Storm surge leading to flooding of low-lying areas there. So, as you've heard, there are cold fronts coming through. Some of them are going to be very dangerous. All right, to the temperatures. Tshwane, fine, -2 and 14. Johannesburg, fine, -3 and 11. Vereeniging, fine, -5 and 12. Bombela, fine, 7 and 18. Polokwane, fine, 3 and 18. Mahakeng, fine, -4 and 17. Vryburg, fine, -8 and 16. Mangaung, partly cloudy, becoming fine, -6 and 13. Kimberley, partly cloudy, becoming fine, -4 and 16. Uppington, fine, -2 and 17. Cape Town, cloudy, windy, widespread showers and rain. Heavy downpours expected in the afternoon in Cape Town. A strong northwesterly wind, 10 and 14. George, partly cloudy, a moderate to fresh northwesterly, 9 and 17. Gqeberha, partly cloudy, isolated showers, a fresh to strong northwesterly wind, 9 and 20. East London, partly cloudy, a moderate to fresh westerly wind, 11 and 23. eThekwini, fine, a light to moderate westerly wind, 8 and 22. Richards Bay, fine, a light to moderate westerly, 7 and 24. And Pietermaritzburg, fine, 0 and 21.
It's Truck Month at Ford, and that means one thing. You save big when you upgrade to a 4x4. For a limited time only, get a Ford Ranger 4x4 from only $8,599 per month. Visit your nearest Ford dealer to get the best deal on a Ranger 4x4 from only $8,599 per month with free 4x4 driver training. TNCs apply.
The Rockets are taking their game to another level. They welcome the top league German outfit FC Augsburg to Mzansi, Africa. Mpumalanga province will vibrate with 2 spectacular matches between TS Galaxy and FC Augsburg. Will the German outfit travel back to Europe with gold? Or will the boys of Team Sukazi demonstrate what home ground advantage looks like? This is the inaugural Mpumalanga Premiers International Cup. Do not miss out on 2 spectacular matches between TS Galaxy FC and FC Augsburg on back-to-back Saturdays, 20 and 27 July at 2:30 p.m. Live on SABC Sport on DTT Channel 4, SABC 1 and SABC radio stations. #We love it here. Proudly brought to you by SABC Sport. For the love of the game.
Worldview Update, bringing you closer to international or global news.
22 after 6, good morning. In the US, it appears more voices in the Democratic Party are calling for their presidential candidate, the President Joe Biden, to drop out of the race against former President, the Republican Donald Trump. They say his behavior and his age may cause the Democrats to lose and thus see another term for Trump. 10 days ago, Biden took part in a debate against Trump in which he appeared to not finish sentences. He, since then, has given what I suppose could be described as slightly scripted interviews. He says he will stay in the race. Professor John Stremlau is an honorary professor of international relations at Wits University. Professor Stremlau, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen. How are you?
I'm well, thanks. Biden is 81. He's from a generation born during the Second World War. Pressure is growing on him really big time to pull out of the race. What do you think he should do?
Well, personally, I think he should withdraw. And I am with the majority of the American people. 72% 74%, and the New York Times Siena poll. ABC yesterday released a poll that had 86% thinking that he should step down. But Biden is 82, and the same age that Nelson Mandela was when Nelson not to run for a second term. And I think he would be wise to choose not to run. There's a number of candidates that could be sliced in, starting with Kamala Harris, the vice president, to succeed him and be very, very effective against Donald Trump, unlike the debate that you mentioned on the 27th. But, and there's a big but, that he's not going to, he's been defiant and he's not going to step aside, it looks like. And the party does not have any other alternative, and he must beat Donald Trump. So the dilemma for Democrats is that they either pull together behind Biden or they squabble among themselves and Trump smiles all the way to the White House.
So is Kamala Harris, the vice president, I've never really understood why she hasn't been able to make a little bit more of an impact. Some of what I've read suggests that she's not very popular. Some says she's wildly popular. Would she be able to take on Trump? It would require, of course, a completely united Democratic Party. And wasn't that Biden's sort of unique selling point 5 years ago? He could unite the Democratic Party and no one else could.
He was, but at the time he said it was a bridge to another generation. And what he's should be doing is having a truncated open primary and allow for the convention to choose the successor. But Kamala Harris has been woefully, in my mind, underestimated. She was a public prosecutor and attorney general in the state of California and then a senator, and she's very, very effective. She would eviscerate Donald Trump in a debate, for example. I don't think he'd debate her. And so I think that she's now been on the world stage as a vice president. But don't forget that Biden gave her, as Obama gave Biden, the difficult tasks of immigration and other questions that loom in the body politic. But I don't think that the right wing, which is under Trump, is racist and xenophobic and contrary to the best American traditions. Mind you, there have been a lot of rebellions since the founding of the Republic, and this is to keep in mind in South Africa, because you've had the MK party just recently isolated now. But the Democrats have not been able to rally around Biden effectively thus far, and I don't know what's going to happen in the next week or so.
Very quickly, who makes the decision? Is it only Biden? It's clearly not Harris, I presume. There are other people in the Democratic Party who make the decision.
Well, it's a country of 330 million people, Stephen, but in fact, the president now has the votes to carry himself forward for a second term, and I don't see, unless he voluntarily steps aside, that there will be any possibility of that happening, and therefore the dilemma that I mentioned earlier, you rally around Biden because you've got to beat Donald Trump for the sake of the world and for the sake of the American people.
Professor John Stremnap, thanks very much indeed. Honorary Professor of International Relations at Wits University, 27 after 6.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, so we beat Ireland last weekend. Now looking at the breakdowns.
Absolutely. The Boxers sharpening their skills at the breakdowns to bring some serious heat against the Irish. And this is from the Springbok attack coach Tony Brown, emphasising the team's focus ahead of their second test against Ireland this weekend. A better showing at the breakdowns will give the Boks the freedom to unleash their quality attack and put Ireland under more pressure.
It's just going to be fierce again. Ireland have traditionally been really strong at the breakdown defensively. So from an attacking point of view, we've got to be better. The better the ball we get, the better we can attack. And Ireland obviously want to slow that down. They want to disrupt, which disrupts our attack. So we've got to make sure that our breakdown's quality, our ball carries the quality.
Meanwhile, Ireland hooker Dan Sheehan will miss the second test against the world champions. That's the Box in Durban. Sheehan sustained the injury after tackling Springbok lock Ibn Etzebeth during the first half of that 27-20 loss in Pretoria. He was replaced at halftime by Leinster teammate Ronan Kelleher, who is likely to start in Durban, with Rob Herring providing cover on the bench. Scrum half Craig Casey will also miss the final match of the series. Athletics now, the world record holder in discus, Simone Kruger, is set to compete in her second Paralympic Games in Paris from the 28th to the 8th of September. At just 19 years old, she shattered the world record with a throw of 38.84 meters at the Paris World Athletics Championships in Kobe, Japan. That was in May. And this was confirmed by the SA Sports Confederation and Olympic Committee SASCOC of her inclusion in the team of 26 athletes yesterday. Tennis action. Novak Djokovic accused some Wimbledon centre court fans of using a Holger Rune chant as an excuse to boo him during his fourth round match. Despite winning 6-3, 6-4, 6-2, Djokovic felt disrespected.
And to all those people that have chosen to disrespect the player, in this case me, have a good night. Good night, good night. Very good night. Yeah. I'm hoping that they were just commenting on Rune and that they weren't disrespecting you. They were. I don't accept it. No.
And that's where we leave it for now. We'll have more sport. Top of the hour, I'm Sai Khan.
Good morning. All right, well, plenty coming up in the next half hour. We'll find out about the damage to Cape Town schools. Also, as more bad weather on the way for Cape Town, what preparations are they making as schools go back today? You're with SFM leading the conversation. Good morning, 6:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, heavy rains have led to flooding in some parts of the Northern Cape, including Hantam, Kamisberg and Middelpos. Strong winds also caused damage to telecommunications infrastructure, leaving some places without cell phone coverage. Transport Minister Barbara Creasy says an efficient and functioning transport sector is the key to a successful economy. She was speaking at the 42nd Southern African Transport Conference in Pretoria. And the UN Security Council will convene later today in an emergency session over a Russian missile attack that struck Kyiv's main children's hospital. I'll have details on these and other stories at 7.
SAFM. Guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Back to school day today, and you can see that in Cape Town. Just want to kick it off in the Western Cape. There is traffic all over the highway networks where there hasn't really been for the last 3 weeks. It's there, it's heavy, and it's early as well. So if you've got a trip to make around Cape Town, not only back to school, not only bigger volumes, but also very wet conditions, rain moving into the Cape Town region again this morning, and in parts it is particularly heavy. Just staying in the Cape, watch for sea debris along Baden-Powell Drive between Strandfontein and Muizenberg. We saw that storm surge hitting Baden-Powell yesterday. Clarence Drive between Gordons Bay and Royales remains closed. Anyone that wants to come from Royales or east of that area will have to backtrack and go up through Botrefia, Crabo and over Sir Larry's Pass. It is the long way round. Joburg this morning, N1 north at Krasmere. We saw some delays there yesterday, seeing it again this morning as volume of traffic coming out through the plaza into the roadworks by the services just gets caught up. Durban looking all right. There's no lights though. Phoenix Highway in Eastbury. So if you come out of Phoenix, that's likely to be slow. It's a busy junction, that one, as you head towards Trade Centre. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
Nta Lenglachela, good morning. How are you doing?
Morning, Stephen. I'm well, thanks. I hope you're good.
All good. How are the markets this morning?
Kicking things off in Wall Street, those markets upbeat with the S&P 500 and Nasdaq closing at record highs yesterday as investors awaited key inflation data to provide further clues about whether this year's market rally is sustainable. Now, over in Asia, stocks trading mixed. We are seeing big gains in Japan, though, with the Nikkei climbing to a record, extending gains for the year to more than 23%. Back at home, trading also in mixed territory, the JSE All-Share losing a tepid 0.02% as markets awaited local mining and manufacturing prints. In your currency markets, the rand clocking in 5 straight days of gains is currently trading at 18.30 to the dollar.
And then KPMG warning of a slowdown in global growth. This is going to be a big issue, I think.
That's right, Stephen. Now, KPMG expects global growth to fall to 2.5% this year. This is from 2.7% growth recorded in 2023. Now, the outlook has been based on the current macroeconomic environment where both consumer and business confidence has been downbeat. Frank Blackmore, lead economist at KPMG Southern Africa, says between interest rate uncertainty and the elections that we've seen across different countries, business leaders remain hesitant to engage in major investment projects. Consumers are also cutting back on finance goods due to elevated rates, while governments face higher financing costs as debt rolls over at these higher interest rate levels. Now, in the meantime, KPMG has actually lifted its forecast for South Africa to 1.2% this year from 0.6% in 2023. Now, the projected expansion is as a result of better than expected stability of the electricity grid as we currently enjoy over 100 days without power cuts.
And Paramount and Skydance, they're gearing up for a merger. I mean, they're big in the entertainment business, those two.
Very big, and M&A activity is just picking up in that industry. Paramount Global and Skydance, as you mentioned, have agreed to merge less than a month after the sites abruptly ended the deal talks. Now, the transaction resolves months of speculation around the future of Paramount, which also reportedly attracted a $26 billion bid from a consortium, including Sony Pictures and private equity firm Apollo Global Management. So a number of firms trying to get those assets. Now, under the two-step deal between Skydance and Paramount, Skydance will first pay $2.4 billion for National Amusements, which controls 77% of the voting shares of Paramount. The deal, however, isn't sealed as yet. The group is awaiting regulatory approvals, and while that takes place, Paramount is giving other potential bidders about 45 days to submit a competing offer. This in an effort to appease shareholders who felt Skydance's initial bid undervalued their stake in the company.
Ntaleng, thanks so much. Ntaleng Lechela, back of course in an hour. More business news through the day here on SAFM.
There's sponsoring a news feature. Then there's helping your clients make the news. Search Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking to see how far they can take your business. There's listening to the news. Then there's making the news. Grow your business into the next big thing with Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. When you choose Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking, you get access to our transactional banking solutions. Accessing our transactional banking solutions means you'll get a dedicated manager from the country's best relationship bank. When you have a dedicated relationship manager, their business is to understand your business and its financial needs. By understanding all your needs, they can connect you with the right sector and product experts across 15 key African markets. You see, there's transactional banking, then there's transactional banking with us. Search Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider. T's and C's apply.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
That's the number to dial this morning. Vusi on the line from Midrand. Hello, Vusi. How are you doing?
Hi, morning. How are you, Steve?
I'm well. Long time. Go for it.
Yeah. Good. Look, man, in the new government, GNU. Look, let me deal with the issue of Sputla Ramokgopa on the issue of renewable energy. Yes, I've realized also Mr. Ramokgopa Sputla was very excited. He's very excited lately because their program of renewable energy and the IPP, it appears to start to be running, of which they are still going to rely on ESCOM, either way or one way or the other. But the unfortunate part of voters on the ground and South African masses is that they are not going to get access of that kind of energy, because now electricity has been tend to be very expensive. At the expenses of what? At the expenses of the very same voters. Why, Steve, I'm talking about this? It is going to be very unfortunate to see this government of national unity failing on basic issues of service delivery. Part of it is the renewable energy. The renewable energy which we are supposed not to be having, because South Africa or Africa in general has been blessed with coal, of which
also blessed with sun and wind, Vusi.
Yeah, correct. But our trajectory was sitting on the coal power station. That is why you see Europe and Asia, and even including the USA, they have built again extra power coal station. Why? Ask yourself. They cannot tell South Africa, take a route of renewable energy, while they are taking the coal of South Africa. Wait, no. let me finish, you'll come in. Let me finish. While they are taking the coal of South Africa, why don't they, if it is true, why then don't they take the route of renewable energy? Yeah,
so, Vusi, all right, no, Vusi, I mean, they are going the route of renewable energy, and very, very quickly, in fact. And the fact is that once you have the solar or the wind systems working, you don't have to pay for the coal. I mean, some things are obvious, you don't have to pay for the coal. I mean, it obviously makes a huge difference.
Okay, let me tell you something which is factual now. There's no any country whatsoever. You can take Ghana and those who have tried the route of renewable energy, which they fail on it. But countries which now are successful is either their own coal power station or their own nuclear power station.
No, Vusi, that's not...
No, I'm telling about the study which is there.
Which
now
study?
I'm speaking about
By who?
By Germany, by China, by Japan.
Well, China is producing more solar power and more solar-powered power stations than anyone else. I mean, they're the ones producing all the solar panels.
Okay, you can go now and check how many coal power stations China has extended, has further established on the ones which they have.
All right. Thanks, Vusi, on the line from Midrand. Look, I mean, I realize it's a complicated issue, but my understanding is that renewable seems over time to be cheaper. Let's go to the Eastern Cape. Is it Wandasile? Wandasile, hi, good morning. Joe Biden in the US.
Morning, Stephen. How's it, man?
All right, go for it.
Stephen, there's something that doesn't add up for me with Joe Biden's team, right?
Yeah.
Doesn't the president have a medical team that's on standby 24/7?
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. Now, Joe Biden is a senior citizen, right?
Yeah.
Meaning that he should be going to a doctor's visit regularly, right, for his age. Don't you think they did give him medical advice that is not fit enough to stand?
Oh, I see. So in other words, the doctors should say one way or another if he should stand.
Exactly my point.
Yeah.
I think there's a sabotage within his team.
Sure.
Right? I think there's a strategy to get him out within the team. I called last week and I spoke to Ashraf. I said, Ashraf, the way I see it, I think his own team is trying to get him out, but they want the public to get him out, not to make as if they're the ones that push his agenda.
I don't know, I mean, I didn't see the whole debate, but I've seen clips of him recently, and it doesn't look good, Wandasile.
And I think, you know what, the plan is to get Kamala in, because think about it, she's an African American. She's a black woman. Think about it, the agenda. If we get Biden out before the election, the party stand a good chance to gain the votes again. Everybody's going to support the first black woman who's a president in the country.
Well, it's America. I don't know if they would, unfortunately. Yeah.
I think there's a plot to get him out within his own team, man.
All right, no, Wandasile, interesting, thank you. I mean, it's a very interesting thing. I mean, it was one of the reasons I said to Melissa yesterday, I think we need to do this story, because I think there might be, how do we put it journalistically, developments on this at some point. Tsepo on the line from Mpumalanga. Tsepo, hi, nuclear power. Minister Grootes On also talking about that yesterday.
Hi, Stephen, how are you?
Yeah, well, Tsepo, go for it.
Good, Stephen. I just want to add on what Vusi said, man. It's very true, Stephen. I live in Mpumalanga. I work in Mpumalanga, around in one of the big mines around Mpumalanga.
One of the coal mines?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you have to travel on N2 to ask yourself, where is this coal going? Yeah? And then we move in an excess of a month. We move to Germany and China. We've got customers in Germany and China. In a month, we move in excess of around, I think, more than 500 tons of coal.
Yeah, no, it's a huge amount. I mean, that's why we have those queues at Richards Bay, yeah.
Hence you have to ask yourself, where is this coal going?
Yeah.
Why are they buying so much coal from us?
So,
while they want...
Okay, so Tsepo, here's my understanding of it, right? And you tell me, but this is my understanding, is that when Russia invaded Ukraine and Europe uses a lot of Russian gas, and when all of that changed, they decided to keep some of their coal-fired power plants going a little bit longer. But that doesn't mean that the idea is to use them for another 20 years. Europe and much of the world is moving towards renewables as quickly as they can, and that's for a couple of reasons. One of them is because of the climate. You live in Mpumalanga. You live in the province that has some of the world's worst air quality as a result of the coal-fired power stations. And so that is the long-term plan. Temporarily, yes, they're using more of our coal, but that's not the long-term plan.
No, one thing, Stephen, that traveling. I don't know if it's me or all South Africans or what. This loan that US want to give us, Stephen, do you think we can sustain that loan in the long run?
So it's basically climate finance. It's a loan at very good terms to help us move to transition to green energy. You're talking about that money.
You don't know about the terms of that loan.
Well, government has signed loans with many different people. I'm sure if you ask for a Promotion of Access Information Act, the terms will become available, as the vaccine contracts did eventually, for example.
That's a lot of money to him.
No, sure. All right, Tsepo, thank you. On the line from Mpumalanga. Good to hear from a coal miner on the 16 to 7.
The National Pulse.
There's been widespread confirmations from other places, not from the DA officially, that in fact the DA accept the fact that now that they will not be part of the province of Gauteng's executive.
The ANC basically said to the DA, well, we're going to allocate you 3 portfolios out of 10, even though the difference of seats between the ANC and the DA is 6, or the percentage is about 7% only. And the ANC would take 7 seats, either for itself or for other unnamed parties. So the DA, it's a bit like Ashraf selling your house without agreeing on the purchase price. This would be the equivalent, in the sense that the DA had no idea who it would be going to business with in this government.
Not only on a former party leader, I could say former ambassador as well.
The National Pulse, weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m. First in the morning, SAFM Sunrise with Stephen Grootes.
According to 7, good morning. The Gauteng Education Department says it will comply with the recommendations of the Public Protector after Advocate Koleka found that the department did not follow the right procedures when constructing the Maibuya Primary School in Tembisa. The department spent over 80 million rand on the school, but it was built too close to a wetland, which also had a sewage pipe leaking into it. The report found officials only commissioned a report about the impact of the wetland after construction had already begun. Steve Mabona is the spokesperson for the Gauteng Education Department. Steve, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and to all our listeners.
As I understand it, you work with the Department of Public Works and Infrastructure in building a school. They're actually in charge of that process. Did they have the responsibility for building this school?
Yes, indeed, you're correct. The infrastructure development has a responsibility to build our schools or our building in the province. We then budget and probably are responsible for the prototype, what kind of school we need, and all those elements, prepare documentation, and then we give it to them. They will then be responsible to start with the process, whether work on the land, procure the land, all those things, they will then decide the matter.
Who decided where the school should be? Obviously, you needed a primary school in Tembisa. I understand that. But who decided on that specific site? Was it you or the infrastructure department?
The infrastructure department will then do that, identify land, and they will then, confirm with us this is the area. Because we'll just indicate in the area we meet in an appropriate space to build a school. So this space was not far adrift from a temporary structure that we had, and we then agreed to that.
Okay, so eventually someone had to commission a report into the fact that there was a wetland there. And obviously that report should have been commissioned before building started. I mean, that's why money's been wasted here.
Yes, indeed. The public protector as well did confirm. They had to conduct that investigation. It was confirmed that the wetland survey was not conducted. And later when that process was done, the wetland was indeed delineated and on the boundary line, not inside the school. And they were then later detected that the sewer line is too close as well, and there were some leaks which compounded to the wetland, and we had to then remove or decommission the sewer line, to move away from the school. So those processes have been done, and that's why earlier this year we then had to launch the school and make sure that the learners are accommodated at that school.
I mean, you've got a situation where you have a school that was supposed to open, I think, in 2017, finally opened properly this year. And I understand the pressures of the population in Tembisi. You need a school. There's not a lot of place to build one. But someone then decided that to build it next to a wetland with a sewage pipe was fine. I mean, and then the school only opens 7 years late after 80 million rand has been spent. I mean, how are we supposed to assess the entire Gauteng provincial government in this?
Look, the report and the findings, there's remedial action that must be, taken. Public protector was very clear that because there was an investigation that was launched to check on who did what, who didn't do what was supposed to be done. So that report is still expected to be furnished to the public protector because they did request that. And the Premier is responsibility of an oversight. All those that are cited in the report, we were given responsibilities like as education. We were, given a responsibility that must make sure that the phase 2 that we are building as a department, we need to be economically viable or be compliant to the Public Finance Management Act, as it were. And all other departments, they must then also do what is expected of them. And Public Protector insisted on the license that we must get from the Department of Water Affairs because we are operating near that wetland. So all those things we have a responsibility to do because we were given 60 days to consult.
Steve, what I'm trying to get to is, it seems to me, and you're the person currently representing the Gauteng provincial government in this conversation. I realize you represent the education department. But it seems this has been a sort of comedy of errors. I mean, a tragic comedy of errors in a way. I mean, there are a whole lot of things here that should not have happened. Money was wasted. Children didn't have the school they should have had. This is surely not acceptable that it happened like this.
Yes, indeed. I mean, that was echoed by the Premier, interacting with all those that are responsible. That's why we then must implement the remedial action, which is going to assist the process. So, yes, we did concede that there's many things that did not happen the way they were supposed to. And, when Public Protector requested the report, she was furnished with everything which has to do with this project. And that's why the remedial action, which the Premier will make sure that is implemented.
Steve Mabona, thank you. Spokesperson for the Gauteng Department of Education, 9 minutes to 7.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Remind about the queues that you encounter at Crossmere these days on the M1 North, coming up through the plaza and up in towards the engine. That's the roadworks and the volume of peak hour traffic getting caught in that. Delays out of Benoni to Boksburg, a breakdown near Rondebolt Road. And if you're on the N1 moving through Midrand, it's jammed this morning already from Brockfontein, interchange down towards the New Road exit. Durban side, you've got some delays coming out of Phoenix towards Trade Centre. No traffic lights, Phoenix Highway and Eastbury this morning. So an additional backlog of traffic moving slowly through there. The exit from Chatsworth, fairly slow and bunched up on the Higginson Highway from Bayview through towards the N2 highway. And Cape Town, we've got a busier set of highways than we've had over the last few weeks. It is back to school day and back to school in the rain as well. So already pretty fully loaded on your highway networks into Hospital Bend, up through towards Cuba. Get a change on the M5. That queue back around Ottery, the N1 from Brackenfell through to Sable Road. And just off the highways, you've got no traffic lights either on Marine Drive at Broad Road. That's just around the Milnerton High School. That traffic coming out of Tableview Parklands is heavily backed up already with queues back towards Bayside Junction. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The inaugural Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking Conference will take place from 10 to 12 July 2024 in Cape Town under the theme Africa Unlocked, Unlocking Africa's Growth. Tune in to The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga and The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda to get insights from the conference. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Search Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking. Standard Bank is an authorized FSP and registered credit provider.
Big stories of the day. Hashtag SAFM Sunrise.
7 minutes to 7 the time. You know the number 086 000 2032. Well, more rain expected in Cape Town after the flooding over the weekend. In fact, storm surges expected in many parts of the coast. Very cold as well. Weather Service says that the cold fronts will keep the country in their grip until at least tomorrow. The Western Cape Education Department saying at least 29 schools have been damaged by the weather over the weekend. Government schools due to go back today after their mid-year holiday. Bronagh Hammond is the spokesperson for the Western Cape Education Department. Bronagh, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to your listeners.
How bad is the damage so far?
Yeah, well, last night we received additional reports. It's actually 81 schools now that have reported, some form of either leaking or flooding damage to their schools, with 31 reporting quite urgent interventions. So, I think the biggest interventions that we are focusing on now is those that have had roof sheets that have been blown off, which can actually cause further damage in terms of the rainfall that we are expecting today and tomorrow, and further flooding in those schools. So that's what we're focusing on now, and just trying to ensure that we try and get those repair works done as soon as possible.
Are you going to keep some schools closed today? I mean, they're due to go back today, but are you going to have to keep some closed?
Well, from last night we had one request from a school in West Coast, a primary school there, that had some roof sheets that came off a number of the classrooms and some electricity cables that had come down. So there was a bit of a risk there. So we are going to address that today. But that's the only school that has requested that I'm aware of. But at the moment we have disaster management, on call in terms of alerting us to any routes, to schools that might be at risk. We might need to cancel some learner transport routes, but I haven't had any information so far on that.
I'm afraid to say, but this may only be just the beginning. We're expecting more rain this afternoon, from what I understand. Very difficult to prepare for something like this, of course.
It is, but we've been very lucky over the last few years in the Western Cape with the weather in terms of the timings of schools and rainfall. But this was in the past this is the Cape of Storms. Where everyone would arrive at school wet and cold. It was the norm, and I think we also need to remind ourselves that this is the environment that we do live in the Cape. But it's going to be a wet and cold morning for a lot of parents and learners today, that's for sure, as the rainfall is still coming down in the Western Cape.
Bronagh Hammond, thanks very much indeed. The spokesperson for the Western Cape Education Department. Do appreciate it. Very difficult situation that's developing there, of course, as you can imagine. It's 4 minutes now to 7 the time.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
All right, good to hear from you this morning, and of course a lot going on, a lot of it around the weather. By the way, would you believe a former Director General has been in touch this morning on this question of what is the plural of Director General? He says that, in fact, the plural of Director General is Directors General. So it seems was correct. Whoever taught me English was correct. The plural is Directors General, not Director Generals. You may have a different view. Be very keen to hear from you. Let's go to Faith in Queenstown. That's in the Eastern Cape. Faith, hi, good morning. What's happened to you there?
Good morning, Stephen. I live in a village called Lesserton in Queenstown.
Oh, yes?
And I built my house and I got the 60 amp supply of electricity, which I bought from Eskom. There are houses here that are mentioned that have been given the 20 amp supply, which is normally given to indigents. Okay. Now, they are tampering with my supply of electricity. I switched off plugs yesterday, and light bulbs are just blowing up. You can tell there is interference and there is the surging is happening on my side. Now I'm in darkness.
Sure.
And I'm scared to plug anything. Things are just blowing up. A lamp blows up. A power bank was blowing up. I mean, those are small, they are low users of electricity. But yesterday morning, the microwave blew, the fridge is going. And I have reported this. I've lived here since 2019, since 2017. I got the supply of electricity in 2019. And from the time that I got that supply, I've had interference. Unfortunately, the technicians are part of the problem. My very neighbor here came in 2020. And a week later, she had a supply of electricity. I have a dossier of reports. Eskom is doing nothing about it.
So Faith, I just want to understand this. So people are messing with the electricity there. They're getting it presumably free for them.
For free.
And that's having a huge impact on you because the whole system doesn't work properly.
Yeah, everything is just blowing up.
Sure. And do Eskom do anything about it?
I've reported, like I say, since I got the supply 2019 May the 30th. And in June of that year, I was without electricity for 4 days. I reported, I have a whole dossier of reports.
Sure.
And they do nothing about it because the technicians are part of the problem.
Yeah.
Now, I'm appealing to Eskom head office to attend to this.
Okay.
I'm not going to burn in my house. Neither will I watch my house burn down. It will be in their hands. And anything that's in it will be their responsibility. I really cannot live like this. It is cold. I'm less than 50 kilometers from Penno Park, which is closed, no doubt.
Okay, Faith, thank you very much indeed. On the line from Queenstown, Lesserton in the Eastern Cape. What an important story to actually tell us about how what one group of people are doing is having an impact on others. I think it's a really important story, Faith. Thank you for that. Are you having the same problem? Have you had any success when you reported to Eskom? Please let us know. I'd really appreciate that on 086 000 2032. Good morning. More, of course, on the flooding, more on electricity as well. You're with SFM leading the conversation. It's 7 o'clock.
Outsurance will go out of their way to try and save you money on your car insurance. If they can't, ask for 500 Rand. SMS out to 30754. Now that's good news.
In our top stories, widespread cold conditions and an alleged kidnapper killed and 5 others arrested. Good morning. Heavy rains have led to flooding in some parts of the Northern Cape, including Hantam, Kamisberg and Middelpos. Some residents around Hantam suffered severe damage to their properties and have been relocated to temporary accommodation. Strong winds also caused damage to telecommunications infrastructure, leaving some places without cell phone coverage. Spokesperson for the Department of Cooperative Governance is Babalwa Mzambo.
Currently, Kamisberg is experiencing flooded roads and disrupted telecommunication services, while some families in Nantam have faced significant property damage, necessitating their relocation to Leni Skeppers Community Hall. In Middelbos, power outages persist and approximately 15 informal households in Kalfina have sustained damage. Buffelsrivier in Namakoi is experiencing flooded roads, prompting community members and road users to exercise caution and vigilance on the roads. Affected families have received temporary shelter and provisions, with ongoing assessments conducted by the Provincial Disaster Management Committee to extend further aid as required.
The Western Cape Education Department has confirmed the reopening of schools today amid damage caused by heavy rain and strong winds to some facilities. Western Cape Education Department spokesperson Bruna Hammond says 3 schools have reported severe damage in the West Coast region. She says the department is assessing the damage and communicating with schools to determine the arrangements for continued teaching.
Requests for closure, mainly due to inaccessibility of roads, may be considered on a case-by-case basis pending damages incurred overnight by heavy rainfall. While the weather conditions are set to improve for the reopening of schools, particularly the wind conditions, it is envisaged that it will still be a dark and wet start to the school term. Raincoats, umbrellas and reflective gear is encouraged, and even possible change of clothes. Parents and learners are to please exercise caution on the roads.
The police service and the Special Task Force unit have rescued 2 kidnapped victims and arrested 5 alleged kidnappers at an informal settlement in Crystal Park, Benoni, east of Johannesburg. The 6th alleged kidnapper was shot dead. 1 of the 5 who were arrested was wounded and taken to hospital. A 64-year-old man and a 34-year-old man were both kidnapped while driving in Crystal Park on Sunday. The kidnappers immediately began making ransom demands to their families. Police spokesperson Ethlenda Mates says they were notified and a team led by the Special Task Force was mobilized.
The SAPS assures communities that may be victims of this type of crime that it has the necessary expertise and capabilities to intercept and take down syndicates involved in kidnappings where ransom demands are being made. Last week, 6 kidnappers were arrested and 2 businessmen were rescued.
Transport Minister Barbara Creasy says an efficient and functioning transport sector is the key to a successful economy. Creasy was speaking at the Southern African Transport Conference in Pretoria. She says roads and rail networks are the arteries of the nation and should always remain functional.
In the past year, President Ramaphosa established the National Logistics Crisis Committee. And as incoming minister, my first priority will be to give that committee my unequivocal and unconditional support. I think that already we have seen great progress in terms of improving movement of goods and services through the key logistics corridors and also at our ports. We've also seen improvements in terms of fixing our rail lines and opening some of the stations that we need opened across the country.
And finally, the UN Security Council will convene later today in an emergency session over a Russian missile attack that struck Kiev's main children's hospital. Reports suggest Russia hit the hospital with a missile while raining missiles down on other cities across Ukraine, killing at least 36 civilians. Actions the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has condemned. Showan Bryce Peace reports.
A statement from the SG spokesperson said Guterres condemned the attacks by the Russian Federation that hit residential and civilian infrastructure across Ukraine, including the capital Kyiv, Dnipro and Pokrovsk. He referred to the incidents targeting medical facilities, including the strike on the Children's Hospital, which is the largest pediatrics facility in Ukraine, as particularly shocking. Guterres said that directing attacks against civilians and civilian objects was prohibited under international law, and that such attacks were unacceptable and must end immediately. Russia has denied targeting civilian infrastructure. Sherwin Brycepe's SABC News, New York.
Recapping the top story, heavy rains have led to flooding in some parts of the Northern Cape, including Hantam, Kamisberg and Middelbos. Strong winds also caused damage to telecommunications infrastructure, leaving some places without cell phone coverage. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
Those were the top stories for this hour. Don't miss out on a possible car insurance saving. SMS out to 30754 for a quote. Outsurance, where you always get something out.
Feel like you're paying too much for car insurance? Be like 43-year-old Anissa, who pays only 1,289 Rand per month to insure her silver 2019 Toyota Hilux Raider e-cab with Outsurance. Get a quote from Outsurance today. SMS out to 30754. That's out to 30754 now. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's cricket. The Proteas coach, Shukri Conrad, is confident in Tristan Stubbs as the new test number 3. And in rugby, the Springboks are eyeing a sharper breakdown to spark their attacks against Ireland this weekend. We'll find out more just before 7:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Well, it's back to school Tuesday and back to higher volumes. And we've been seeing just recently the N1 south through Midrand is a good indication of that. It is fully loaded and jammed from the Brakfontein interchange all the way down to New Road this morning. Delays on the N1 coming up from Beyers Nordia through to Winnie Mandela. There's still no traffic lights, Winnie Mandela and the N1 highway. Winnie Mandela and the Monte Cassino junction is also offline as well. Durban, extra delays coming out of Phoenix with lights out of Phoenix Highway and Eastbury Drive, so extra queues down towards the Trade Centre junction. And Cape Town, it really is very busy on the highways. Give you an example, the N5 is queuing from Ottery all the way through to Kuberg Interchange. The M3 this morning is back at Takai, right the way through to Newlands. It's a combination of back-to-school volumes, wet weather, strong winds as well. Driving conditions not great around Cape Town. And Baden-Powell with the sea debris from the sea surge, the strong surges of the sea. Baden-Powell coming from Khayelitsha through to Muizenberg, through that coastal park area, is very slow going. A lot of water and debris from the sea on that section of Baden-Powell. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
9 after 7, good morning. You with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. Coldest day of the year so far by my count. I realise I said that yesterday, still true today. We will be looking at the situation around the weather. The consequences of the weather. Cape Town expecting more rain there this afternoon, it would seem. Also, of course, looking at the weather warnings, looking at the damage, and then looking at life for people with no shelter after the weather and people who live homelessness, people who live basically without any kind of shelter. We'll be looking at that in the next couple of moments. Also, Josienso Ramakopa, the Minister of Energy and Electricity now, talking yesterday about renewable power. Big focus on that again. We'll talk about that more in the next few moments. Your mediated conversation today, the state of our mining industry, the Minerals Council and the Department of Mineral Resources both agreeing to take part. Looking forward to that. Good morning, 10 after 7.
For credible and comprehensive coverage of South Africa's fast-moving mining industry and the people shaping it, click through to Creamer Media's Mining Weekly. From policy and innovation to market-moving trends, Creamer Media's Mining Weekly keeps your finger on the resources pulse. For even deeper insight, subscribe to our New Look weekly magazine, out every Friday, together with engineering news. Creamer Media's Mining Weekly. Current, credible, comprehensive.
Real savings, real benefits. Here's what real clients say about Outsurance.
Hi, my name is Jackie. I'm 35 years old from Pretoria and I only pay 691 Rand for my 2022 Ford EcoSport with Outsurance Comprehensive.
What makes the best car insurer? The best price with awesome service, right? SMS out to 30754 to see if you can pay less, experience awesome service, and see for yourself why Outsurance was voted best car insurer by many publications and best car, home, and business insurer at the News 24 Awards for the past 2 years.
I'm not surprised they won all the awards because in my experience they are excellent.
They walk the talk. They actually do what they say and they follow through on their promises.
SMS out to 30754 and see for yourself. Experience awesome. Go to outsurance.co.za for a 10-minute quote that could save you thousands. Licensed insurer and FSP. T's and C's online.
The inaugural Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking Conference will take place from 10 to 12 July 2024 in Cape Town under the theme Africa Unlocked, Unlocking Africa's Growth. Tune in to The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga and The National Pulse with Ashraf Garda to get insights from the conference. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Agenda-setting conversations of the day.
12 minutes after 7, good morning. Well, the weather still the main issue this morning. The coldest day of the year in most of the country, down to -4 in Joburg, -6 in Vereeniging, -8 in Vryburg. Meanwhile, more warnings of rain and wind in the Western Cape after the flooding over the weekend that saw thousands of people being displaced from their homes. It's having an impact in many directions and may, in some parts of the country, start to get a little bit worse. We start with the Reverend Delaharp Leroux, Managing Director at Towers of Hope in Mangaung. They work with homeless people there. Reverend Leroux, good morning and thanks for your time.
Good morning, Stephen, from a very, very cold Bloemfontein.
For people without shelter, this kind of weather, it must just be impossible to live in.
It's all about survival. You know, we had a conversation yesterday morning with one of the guys just sleeping next to our church, and even though he's got 3 blankets, you know, the guys have to get up before sunrise, because then it's the coldest time, and then the greatest risk is for them to die because of the cold. So I've got no idea what it is to live on the street in this type of weather.
Do people do things that maybe make them vulnerable? They're looking for a warm place. They go under a bridge. They go maybe into, the front of a building or something. People don't want them there. Do they suddenly find themselves in a place where they're actually quite in danger?
Definitely, in various ways. On the one hand, I think it's just, as I said, it's just about survival. And I think if homeless people could speak, they would say, please just give us space. We just try to survive, And again, not all homeless people are criminals, and not all homeless people are addicted to some other substance. So they try all kinds of ways, whether it's trying somewhere a little bit of shelter, somewhere old newspapers, to put next to their body inside their clothing, where they're making a fire, which of course is dangerous, where they're misusing all kinds of substances. They just want to survive. And they ask just from the public, please, just give us space. We just want to survive.
And I would imagine that big problem is also a warm meal. Getting a warm meal in these conditions is impossible.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I think, if you survive what we've experienced, if you survive on the street for some time, you become very streetwise to know where are the NGOs, all the churches, all the soup kitchens where you can go. So we at Towers of Hope, every day we've got soup kitchen, and the numbers are just growing and growing because, a hot meal makes all the difference in giving your body the necessary ability to withstand all these conditions.
Reverend, thank you, Reverend Delaharp Leroux, Managing Director at Towers of Hope in Mangaung, 14 after 7 with SFM. Mary Gillett de Klerk is the coordinator at the Johannesburg Homelessness Network. Mary, good morning to you. What kind of problems are you seeing in Joburg?
Well, Stephen, and to your listeners, in Joburg we have incredibly few facilities to serve the homeless. Yes, soup kitchens do help, but we're needing a huge number of overnight safe spaces and shelters, and we have very, very, very few of those in Johannesburg. And I'm sure you've heard of the funding crisis in Gauteng, where organizations have applied for funding, but we haven't heard a thing. So the situation is dire for NGOs to be able to render those services, as well as the fact that there are so few services. In a city like Johannesburg, as I say, we have no overnight safe spaces, we have very few shelters, and therefore, where do the homeless go? People come to Joburg looking for work because we have a severe unemployment crisis in this country, and then they find themselves homeless on the streets. And they have nowhere to go. And worst of all is when local authorities take their possessions in like raids, and then they pitch up at our organizations in tears because they've lost everything, including ID books and their blankets and all their possessions. And they're now back to square zero. Not even square one. So it's extremely debilitating and demoralizing to people when they're stripped of every vestige of their dignity, and all they are doing is looking for a job and looking for a meal and looking for a place to stay, and there are none. It's like, it's just terrible.
Should they be, do you believe that councils, should cities be providing more shelter spaces in some way?
No, the city authority should provide the what we call the hardware, i.e. the buildings and land and space, and lease them to respected NGOs who've been in this sector for many years. And we have to have a chain of services from, as I say, overnight safe space, drop-in day centres, firstly, so people get, where they can shower and they get to wash their clothes and get social work counselling, and then to overnight safe spaces where they can interact with an occupational therapist, shelters and skills development programs, because the current model that city councils use is that you can stay in a shelter for 3 months. But 3 months is not going to solve homelessness in a sustainable way. It's a whole process of working with the person to actually see who they are, what their issues are, how did they become homeless. And we found a huge rise in homelessness with the post-COVID and the rise in unemployment. And people who we're all basically 2 paychecks away from being homeless in many cases.
Mary Gillett de Klerk, thank you. Stark warning there, coordinator of the Johannesburg Homelessness Network. You're with SFM 18 after 7. Let's find out what the situation is like in KwaZulu-Natal. Siyabonga Klatshwayo is the provincial manager in KwaZulu-Natal for the South African Red Cross. Siyabonga, good morning to you. Amazed to see this morning that the temperature in Pietermaritzburg will drop to 0 degrees. I don't think I've ever seen that before. I don't live there. What kind of problems are you seeing right now? You have slightly different weather to other parts of the country, but still problems to deal with.
Good morning to you and the listeners at home. Since the past 2 days, we've been experiencing strong winds, and that have led to some wildfires breaking out in many parts of the province. Including the north of KwaZulu-Natal. We've seen some incidents where even people's homes have been burned, and also quite a number of people are getting displaced due to this.
You've had so many problems in KwaZulu-Natal over the last few years. There was the violence, which actually started this week in 2021. Then there's the flooding, and a year later, the lack of water in some places. You as an organisation rely on donations, you rely on help from people. You must be running out of resilience when you look at the nature of the need in that province right now.
Yes, indeed. But also during the responses to these incidents, you only gain lessons as well and ways of how you can prepare better for the coming incidents, because we can all agree to that. KZN is vulnerable to quite a lot of incidents. So we also try and take some lessons from previous incidents so that we are able to prepare better, so that we are able to be able to provide assistance whenever needed. But yes, we do agree that there is quite a need actually for community engagement and community mobilization to ensure that really, as KZN, we look into both community members and other role players, including disaster management centers, municipalities. We try to engage and interact in ways on how communities can play a role, how other role players can play a role into ensuring that our province is resilient to disasters and is able to respond also.
Siyabonga Klatshwayo, thanks for the time. The KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Manager at the SA Red Cross, 20 after 7.
Conversations that you connect with and react to. SAFM.
Well, amid the cold, a series of strong comments by the Minister of Energy and Electricity, Kgotsientsho Ramokgopa, yesterday. He said he would be ultra-aggressive in implementing renewable energy. He said that maybe we'd been a bit slow in using renewable energy, but Ramokgopa also saying the current rate of increase in prices being charged by municipalities, in other words, the price you probably pay for electricity, that this rate of increase was unsustainable and was leading to a situation which is untenable. Mohammed Mahdi is an energy expert, CEO at Sinan Energy, joins us now. Mohammed, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and good morning to the listeners.
The Minister wants to be ultra-aggressive when it comes to renewable energy. Is this the right approach at this moment?
Absolutely. And I must commend him for making such a bold statement. It's what we've been calling for a long time. And so at least it's been vocalized, and hopefully it can be verbalized into actions very soon.
I don't know if the former Minister of Energy, the current Minister of Mineral Resources, Grootes On, is listening to this, but he had sort of been accused of refusing to use renewables. Was Ramaphosa kind of contradicting his approach? Let me put it like that.
I think, it's best to probably leave Gwede Mantashe's legacy with regard to energy in the bin that it deserves. And unfortunately, one has to say that given the state of our grid and given where we are currently, I think Ramaphosa and some of the statements he's made needs to now be fully supported with regard to these statements. This is exactly right. This is exactly what the country needs now, a greater emphasis on renewable energy. And one of the first things that can be done to bring that alive, to bring that into action, is to increase the incentives that currently exist for renewable energy, and to also make the regulatory regime, or rather the process with Eskom, a lot easier. A lot of clients are having problems setting up power plants, especially wheeling power plants, because of the delays within Eskom. And I think those delays were not particularly paid attention to under Mantashe's time. But if we can fast track that, we certainly will get a whole lot more renewable energy coming online.
And nuclear at the moment, I know you had a lot of experience in the nuclear sector as well. A lot of reports over the weekend, 2,500 megawatts of nuclear. It seems to me the big issue around nuclear has always been how long it takes to actually go from deciding you want it to actually getting it. Is that still going to be a problem here?
It's absolutely going to be a problem. And, unfortunately, if you look at the nuclear timeline, it will take us probably 2 to 3 years for the procurement process. And nuclear does take about that long for the procurement process. And then another 7 to 10 years, 7 being very optimistic, 7 to 10 years for the build process. So we're looking at a process of between 8 and 10 years from now before we actually get power. It doesn't take a lot to figure out that 8 to 10 years from now, renewable energy is going to be a lot cheaper than it currently is. It's already cheaper than grid energy. It's going to be a lot cheaper. And nuclear is unfortunately going in the opposite direction. Nuclear energy is pretty expensive. So nuclear is not going to be able to compete with renewable energy and battery energy storage. So it's going to be very expensive for this country. And the other problem with the small amount of procurement that we're considering for nuclear is it makes the cost per unit even more expensive. Nuclear is the kind of thing where you really need large scale. And that large scale also enables a local industry to be formed, a local nuclear industry, and it spurs a lot of jobs that has to be admitted. But when it's done at scale, the 2,500 megawatts is woefully small. And, 10 years from now, 2,500 megawatts is going to be a very, very small fraction of what we need in the country.
There's a lot going on around the cost of electricity, and there are big arguments around NERSA. There was a court case last week, I think, involving AfriForum, and it seems to me this whole thing is going to get a lot more technical. And when a journalist says a lot more technical, what that means is it's going to be harder for ordinary people to understand. But the minister made a strong point saying yesterday that electricity is just becoming too expensive. I mean, I can't help but feel that he is right. And that is going to be a major problem. The only solution I can see to that is if solar becomes so cheap that almost anybody can have it on their roof.
That is correct. One has to add to that battery energy storage. So right now, battery energy storage is relatively cheap, but not cheap enough to have the kind of implementation uptake that we've seen with solar. Where battery energy storage is today is about where solar was 3 to 5 years ago. And the reason that's important, as battery energy storage starts dropping and continues to drop, it's already dropping, continues to drop in price, We then have a solution where you can have power at night because you've stored extra solar during the day. And so your grid independence increases, quite a bit more. So this is the big thing, and this is the trend that in fact is currently underway in the country. The amount of battery energy storage being implemented in the private sector by many, many, many companies, not just one, is tremendous. And this is also what is taking pressure off the grid. So this is undoubtedly the cheapest form of energy. Now, if you look at Eskom's price, and the municipalities are takers of electricity by and large from Eskom, Eskom has a reducing customer base and a bloated cost base, and of course a very high debt burden. So the Eskom prices are just going to continue going up, and the minister is right. Grid electricity is way too expensive. It plays into the hands of the private sector at the moment because the more the increases you get in tariffs, the cheaper it is to put on-site power of your own. And this is the trend we need to encourage.
Mohammed Mahdi, thank you. Energy expert, CEO at Sanan Energy. Really appreciate the time. A lot moving in that sector this week. 27 after 7.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Tristan Stubbs going in at number 3.
Yes, Tristan is up to bat at 3, hoping he hits it out of the park like a Proteas on a mission. This was confirmed by Proteas coach Shukri Conrad. Now, the role has been problematic for the Proteas since Hashim Amla retired in 2019 with 8 players trying and failing to make the spot their own. Now, Conrad impressed by Stubbs' technique and performance, especially his recent first-class 303 for the Warriors. He believes Stubbs has the potential to succeed. Now, Stubbs made his red ball debut against India earlier this year and is set to face the West Indies in the upcoming Test series with further matches against Bangladesh, Sri Lanka and Pakistan to follow. Meanwhile, the Springbok attack coach Tony Brown emphasising the team's focus is on improving their breakdown performance ahead of their second test against Ireland this weekend. A better showing at the breakdowns will give the Boks the freedom to unleash their quality attack and put Ireland under pressure. Meanwhile, the Springbok Sevens A side finished the Rugby Africa 7 series, played in Mauritius in second place, with the overall result handing Uganda and Madagascar their passage to contest the World Rugby Sevens Challenger Series for 2025. The South Africans were invited to participate at the tournament on short notice after one of the original contestants pulled out, and despite their short preparation time and many new players in the squad, they applied themselves well. Now, the junior Springboks, they are under no illusion about the task that awaits them against England in their must-win clash of the 2024 Under-20 World Championships taking place in Athlone, Cape Town today. It's the Junior Boks final Pool C fixture before the playoffs on Sunday, with South Africa in a position where they must beat England and hope other results go their way to qualify for the semi-finals. Now, Antoine Griezmann and team are optimistic about France's chances as they gear up for a monumental showdown against Spain in the Euro 2024 semi-finals tonight. Kickoff at 9 p.m.
In terms of ability of making the difference, as you said, individually, of course, is Kylian Mbappe. So, but France is more than him. It's a whole team. They defend so good. They contra-attack. They can play the ball. So there's many aspects. We don't like to individualize on a player.
And finally, tennis. Novak Djokovic accusing Wimbledon centre court fans of using a Holger Rune chant as an excuse to boo him during his fourth round match win.
And to all those people that have chosen to disrespect the player, in this case me, have a good night. Good night, good night. Very good night. Yeah. I'm hoping that they were just commenting on Rune and that they weren't disrespecting you. They were. I don't accept it. No.
More sport, top of the hour. I'm Zai Khan.
Well, he's nice and angry, isn't he? He's going to win as a result of that. You with SFM leading the conversation. More on the climate and the storms in a moment. It's 7:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula is expected to appear before the Pretoria Magistrates Court today on charges related to alleged corruption. Heavy rains have led to flooding in some parts of the Northern Cape, including Hantam, Kamisberg and Middelpos. Strong winds also caused damage to telecommunications infrastructure, leaving some places without cell phone coverage. And the UN Security Council will convene later today in an emergency session over a Russian missile attack that struck Kiev's main children's hospital. I'll have details on these and other stories at 8.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Yeah, more congestion around the country as we go back to school starting the third term today. If we sort of drill down to suburban level in Joburg, you can see around the school areas, just very busy where it hasn't been for a while. The N1 South stays heavy from Brockfontein down to New Road. If you're on the N14, which can often clog on the Krugersdorp Highway towards Pretoria, it is again this morning, just very slow getting up in towards the N1 Brockfontein interchange area as well. Over in Durban, the M4, the Southern Freeway, just queuing up into the CBD. You've got that closure of Brook Street around the China Mall demolition job. So coming through Umbulo and Congella, Southern Freeway into the CBD is quite busy. M7, it's one of those heavy mornings going into Pinetown. Traffic queuing up from Hunstedman all the way through the N3 and up over St John's Avenue Bridge and deep into Pinetown territory. Very slow going through there. Cape Town, everything on a go slow. It's a combo of back to school traffic volumes plus the rain plus some strong and gusting gale force winds this morning. So everything taking a bit of a hammering around the Cape Town area. The highways are busy. The busiest, the M3 coming through to Kai to Newlands. Also the N1 from Belleville all the way through to the city centre is jammed up. And Marine Drive is worth a mention. No lights on Marine Drive near Milnerton High School at Broad Road. That's a very heavy queue extending back through Sunset Beach, back through Tableview and deep into Sunningdale territory. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
The business update on SAFM.
And Taoleng, Lechele morning again. How are the markets this morning?
Now, Stephen, the outlook for monetary policy is in focus this week, and we're seeing traders exercise some caution ahead of important economic prints. In Asia, stock markets are trading mixed ahead of key U.S. inflation data. The Japanese Nikkei is up 2.2%, while Hong Kong's Hang Seng loses 0.32%. In the U.S., futures are surprisingly in the green, tracking yesterday's performance as both the S&P 500 and Nasdaq hit record highs. Back at home, markets kicking the week off on a slow note, with the JSE losing 0.02% in yesterday's trade. Moving over to the Rand, the local unit performing really well, clocking 5 straight days of gains and being a top performer in the emerging market basket. It's currently sitting at 18.13 to the dollar.
And then AutoZone filing for business rescue.
That's right. Now, AutoZone has been under financial distress, and this has resulted in the company filing for voluntary business rescue. The car parts supplier has been struggling to meet payments deadlines, and so it saw it fit to do this. Company CEO Dion de Graaf seems to be positive about the group's prospects despite the current blip, citing its strong national brand and brand loyalty as key factors that could attract investment interest moving forward. Now, AutoZone's decision to pursue business rescue reflects a broader trend of financial distress in local businesses. From early 2024, the country has seen an increase in business closures. According to Stats SA, more than 240 businesses closed in the first 2 months of the year, a 1.6% rise when compared to 2023.
And then Sun International calling for easier access to visas. That's interesting.
So Sun International is urging the government to simplify the process of obtaining a travel visa to South Africa, believing this change will increase tourism and benefit the economy. Now, the company's general manager for Sun City, Brett Hopp, said while the group had experienced an uptick in local travelers during the pandemic lockdowns, leveraging from the closed travel borders, tough visa requirements were slowing the return of international guests to pre-COVID pre-COVID levels, particularly those from China. He added that the Chinese market has not yet returned to full steam and that there's still a massive opportunity for growth from that market only if visa requirements are amended. Now, the group will be eyeing the Minister of Home Affairs' next move in regards to this. This announcement also comes as the group makes progress with its renovation plans. Sun International has invested 530 million rands into Sun City to attract more guests.
And of course, the new Home Affairs Minister is from the DA, Ntaleng Lechela. Thanks very much indeed. Back tomorrow, more business news for the day here on SFM.
Call us on 086 000 2032.
All right, good to hear from you this morning. You know the number 086 000 2032. The situation regarding the floods, the impact on you, what impact has that had? Issues around Eskom as well. How important is that for you? I mean, the problems around connections. You heard Faith in the Eastern Cape very frustrated with the problems that she's been having because people there are interfering with the electricity she's receiving because of their illegal connections. Voice notes coming through on that this morning on 0614 104 107.
Stephen, the reason that people end up bypassing these boxes and get free electricity is because of the way that Eskom is responding to their request. When people call, they call because they want to do things right. I cannot understand why would that woman stay without electricity in this cold whilst she's paying and she's getting her electricity legally. So people end up bypassing these boxes because that's the only solution that they have. They want to fix things for themselves. Thank you. Manda in Bloemfontein.
Manda, yeah, thank you. I mean, this is the issue, and people are very, very frustrated. Mark on the line from Cape Town on renewables. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Stephen. It just doesn't make sense. The energy minister wants to go big on renewables, and the finance minister puts a 10% tariff on solar panels.
Yes, I saw that. That's a very strange
illogical
decision, yeah.
Well, I mean, in Patel it makes sense maybe, but I would hope Ina Pandwana would be a bit more practical. Hopefully they can speak to each other and sort it out.
Yeah. No, I think it's the panels of the... There is a way for an exemption, but it's still a strange time to bring that in.
Yeah, I mean, it's just backwards, basically. Anyway, I'm sure they'll work it out. Just on the cost of Eskom, a lot of these costs are just baked in state capture. So one way or another, we're going to pay for state capture, either through the tariffs or through bailout. There's no way around it.
All right, yeah, Mark in Cape Town, thank you. Yeah, look, I think in the end, the Eskom debt is so big, the only way you're going to pay it back is through government in a way. Other voice notes coming through around Eskom this morning.
Hi, morning, SG. The lady that phoned and talk about the Eskom, I can tell you now that she's not alone. I was on holiday in Limpopo. Many people there, they hire these people called the Izinyoka. They're going around with a ladder and fixing the problem that they have with electricity instead of calling Eskom, because most of them, they're saying Eskom, even if you call them, especially now during election, no one was coming out to fix electricity for them. So majority of them are bridging, and then others are just calling the Izinyoka to come and fix the electricity for them. So yeah, Eskom is failing the people big time. Bob, Cape Town.
All right, thank you. Yeah, we have huge issues around electricity and the illegal connections. We've discussed it many, many times. Pumelela in Johannesburg on renewables. Hi, Pumelela.
Hi, Stephen. I think my comment is on renewables, and I think your guest that you brought in to comment on the minister's renewables change of mind is obviously is like asking for lions to look after sheep, because he's obviously going to look after his own interests. There's one thing that needs to be taken into account, is that when you bring renewables, it obviously affects the people in Mpumalanga.
Sure. Are you still there, Pumelela? Yeah?
Yeah, I'm here.
So, yes, of course, but that doesn't mean that you don't change. You have to change, otherwise we'll all be stuck where we were 1,000 years ago.
Of course, but you must have a plan about on those people that will lose those jobs, because renewables are not going to bring the same number of jobs as the current coal
So the evidence in the United States, because I thought that too, but the evidence in some other places suggests that the solar industry will actually create more jobs. It surprised me, but that's what some of the studies are showing.
But the economy where we are in comparison with the US is totally different.
No, sure.
Our economy is still very, very behind in terms of that, and our energy supply is still base load.
No, sure. No, Pamela, it's important questions. That's why it's called a just transition, which is what we're supposed to be trying to get to move from one form of electricity production to another. 19 minutes to 8.
And we would buy 500 cars, and we would buy 500 more. So sell your car for the best price, and we won't think about it twice. We buy cars, we buy cars. We buy cars, we buy cars.
We Buy Cars, the easiest way to sell your car by far.
What is Ushuni, you say? Ushuni has a musical gift and can transform a song. Ushuni can fuse folk music with a popular urban beat or tune. Ushuni can take us on a beautiful musical journey. Ushuni way to Gelo. Join us in unearthing South Africa's next folk music star. 40 talented contestants from around South Africa competing for the ultimate grand prize of 500,000 Rand cash and a recording deal. Angeke basikhone with Ushuni Womhlaba, starting 7 July, Sundays at 6 p.m. only on SABC1.
The inaugural Standard Bank Business and Commercial Banking Conference will take place from 10 to 12 July 2024 in Cape Town under the theme Africa Unlocked, Unlocking Africa's Growth. Tune in to the Full Circle with Bridget Masinga and the National Pulse with Ashraf Garda to get insights from the conference. SAFM, leading the conversations that move us.
Across South Africa, online and on radio. SAFM, let's talk.
17 minutes to 8 now, the time. Well, we heard yesterday about the economy in the Eastern Cape, officially in a recession. A couple of interesting and important factors being put forward as to why the Eastern Cape is battling to grow the economy. And, of course, the sort of new government, although many of the people were in the old government taking over there, still, of course, governed by the ANC. Voyo Masana is the CEO of the Eastern Cape Socio-Economic Consultative Council. Voyo, good morning.
Good morning to you, Stephen.
We heard yesterday one of the major factors in slowing the economy there was the construction industry and the construction mafia, and that they're stopping the construction industry from operating. And this is a classic sort of law and order problem. If you don't have law, if you don't have the rule of law being followed, well, then you can't really grow an economy. Does the Eastern Cape have a problem with this?
Stephen, we can't say no to that. It is a reality. You would have had listeners tuning in to some of your sister stations when we had the interviews yesterday, indicating in different parts of the province that, yes, this is experienced. But certainly, Stephen, you wouldn't want to only put that at the top of the agenda. And I agree with you. This is really a law and order issue, and the province has taken the requisite steps to deal with the issue in the number of areas where it has where it's had. But I would say we wouldn't want to really place it just on top of everything else, because we must appreciate the structural issues that affect our economy as part of the national economy. Those being the inflationary pressures, those being your input costs, your energy supply challenges, and so on. So I'm just saying, yes, indeed, we accept that's a challenge that we must deal with, and it has been attended to. The province has already, for example, towards the end of last year, convened a development convention with various partners, business, labor, and civil society organizations to discuss, amongst others, the development direction of the province and how to deal with such challenges.
I don't mean to be rude, Voyo, but conferences and conventions mean nothing. And I realize you run a consultative council and you may have very important conversations. What people want to see is they want to see things working. And often those questions come back down to simple governance. If the roads have potholes, you can't move things in the Eastern Cape, very big province. That's a major issue.
Stephen, you're right. There are challenges you are highlighting. There are challenges that are in the full view of government. State government, I do know, as a consultative council, that is attending to this. For example, I know the Premier, just in the announcement of the new executive in the province, has made emphasis on the need for service delivery and dealing with the challenges that are confronting all spheres of government. In particular, the Premier is already directly raising the bar with respect to having to deliver services in accordance with the norms and standards. And I'm sure when you listen to him at the opening of the legislature, when he does the speech there, you will, for the further term, you will be hearing him giving firm direction of what is going to be done to monitor but also to ensure that the requisite capacity is available to deal with those delivery challenges.
Voya, I didn't mean to start this interview in this way, but the Eastern Cape economy has been in a difficult problem for a long, long time. And there are some historical and perhaps structural reasons for that. You had 2 homelands there. That we know is a problem. You have 2 big cities, you have 2 sort of medium-sized cities rather than one big one. I've often wondered if that's an issue, the size of it and all the rest. But let me be blunt. As the CEO of the Socio-Economic Consultative Council, what difference have you really made in the economy in the Eastern Cape?
Well, the Consultative Council, Stephen, you would, if you have followed its history, has over the years supported government with respect to design of policy strategy. You can go back to the days of the PGDP, and in our days the Provincial Development Plan, and as well as a host of other sectoral policies, including, for example, developing strategies on job creation over the years and compacting the various partners. But concretely on what we're talking about currently, the support we're providing as a applied research organization is to provide evidence-based information and baseline for planning, and which I'm saying this is what drives the province to be able to focus on the challenges on the basis of the known problems from that evidence-based information.
Okay. But through all of this, unemployment has risen in the Eastern Cape, hasn't it? I mean, youth unemployment in particular has risen. I mean, in a way, Voya, you're getting to the heart of the issue I think that we have as governance in South Africa around our economy. And you're currently the unfortunate person and stuck in the interface right here in this interview. But the point is that we talk about the economy, governance, and jobs all the time, and the situation only gets worse. And the same is true of the Eastern Cape.
Stephen, I'm sure you would appreciate that the economy of the country and of the province are intertwined. So the disruptions that we have seen in the international and global economy do not spare South Africa, and I'm sure you've seen that in the COVID, and you're seeing that currently in the global tensions that are taking place. All of those have major disruption in supply chains of the economy right through. And knowing exactly, as you have said, that the Eastern Cape is a province that has had these 2 homelands, but also on top of that, has been deliberately underdeveloped for centuries. And what we are seeing now in this current government, particularly in the last term of government, a very deliberate effort to invest in the unlocking of the road infrastructure right through the province. Such decisions, I'm sure, will ensure better, flight and logistics for the goods that should be traversing that we import from other provinces into the economy of the province. And those are, for me, great steps that the province has taken.
Voya Musana, thank you, CEO of the Eastern Cape Socio-Economic Consultative Council.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Quite heavy backlogs on the N3 getting into Galulis this morning. It's been a crash. It's on the N12 eastbound before the R24 airport split, but that is causing a delay north and southbound trying to get off the N3 at Galulis and onto the N12. So coming up from Germiston, coming south from Edenvale, the N3 to Galulis heavily backed up. The N1's got plenty of traffic this morning between Beyers-Nordia and Rivonia Road, and the N14 Krugersdorp Highway still queuing up to the Brockfontein interchange. Delays just after the R55 Pretoria West exit. There's been a traffic on the M1 South in Pretoria as well. Gaasfontein down to that sinkhole lane restricted section near the R21. Durban, the M7 from Huntstepman up into St John's Avenue Bridge territory and Pinetown's very heavy. The M4 Southern Freeway choked up going into the CBD. That's largely around the closure of the Brook Street around the demolition of China Mall. And Cape Town this morning, everything on a go slow, not only back to school volumes, but also it is wet and it's pretty windy as well this morning. We've got lights out along Marine Drive at Broad. Marine Drive coming out of Tableview is very heavy. Crash nearby on the N7 opposite Dunoon. That's slow both ways. And there's no traffic lights on Bishop Lavis Drive and 35th Avenue. So Stellenbosch Arterial, Robert Sebukwe behind that's all very badly backed up. Strand Road coming out of Cales River through Stickland on your way to Belleville, very slow. And behind that, the R300 just queuing up towards that exit to Strand Road and Fun Ribbick Road. Also the St James area quite slow going south from Musenberg along the main road. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM. Prime time all day long.
All right, 8 minutes now to 8 the time. And of course, big conversations around the situation in Cape Town and the weather there. More warnings for more rain later today. Professor Guy Midgley is the climate change researcher and acting director at the School for Climate Studies at the University of Stellenbosch. Professor Midgley, good morning. Thanks for your time this morning.
Thanks for having me, Stephen.
When we see so much rain in one short space of time above the Western Cape, what's happening in the atmosphere? Why do we see so much rain so quickly? And we do see this happening quite regularly now.
Yes. Well, we're starting to see this phenomenon called the atmospheric river phenomenon, which involves a lot of water getting transported into regions and then dumped out of the sky in the form of rain. But the frontal conditions we're experiencing now are not really atypical for Cape Town at this time of year. And interestingly enough, we've had quite a dry year so far. So we're not even at our average rainfall yet for Cape Town. And we had a very warm week just a week or two ago. And this is really what catches people off guard, is going from quite warm conditions to these sudden, frontal cold, very, very cold conditions. So that's quite jarring.
Is that rapid change in condition something that's happening a bit more often, or has it always happened? I mean, I know Cape Town weather famously difficult to predict, but still, to go from very hot to this is quite dramatic.
It is, and a delayed start to the winter rains seems to be a bit of a feature of the last couple of decades. Also combined with very warm sea surface temperatures around the world, really, leads to these sudden changes as the west, in the case of Cape Town, the westerly winds bring in fronts and bring in that very, very cold sort of subantarctic air, and that's quite it's quite a sort of shocking thing to happen to people.
This issue of wind, and you talk about, I presume that temperatures of the ocean have an impact on wind speed. I mean, in Joburg, wind's not something you really ever think about, but it's something you think about a lot of the time in Cape Town. If we see the climate change and if we see changes to ocean temperatures, what kind of changes will we see to wind strength?
Yeah, it's a very good question. Cape Town has been experiencing some problems with increased wind speed. And we need to remind people that the damage due to wind increases with the square of the wind speed. So it's an exponential effect. And that can really lead to slightly stronger winds causing extreme damage. The ability of Cape Town Port to function has been quite severely affected by increasing wind speed over the last decade or so. So we've seen a very real economic effect there. And then some of the worst hit in this region in the last day or two have been people in informal settlements whose dwellings have been blown down by high winds and who are now also being flooded. So, our structures are very vulnerable to increasing wind speed, and it's not something that we've spent a lot of attention on over the last 20 or 30 years. It seems to be a new thing that we need to start focusing on more.
Professor Guy Mitchley, thank you. Climate change researcher, acting director at the School for Climate Studies at the University of Stellenbosch. Well, listening to that, and I imagine he's had a very difficult 24 hours, is the Infrastructure MEC in the Western Cape, Tertius Simmers. MEC, good morning to you and thank you for your time. I would imagine it's not just the rain that's had a big impact on some of your infrastructure, but the wind too.
Good morning, Stephen. Good morning to SFM listeners. Yes, no, indeed. Our infrastructure, which is the heavily more the roads and our informal settlements, have been impacted by the winds as well, indeed, yes.
What kind of damage have you seen so far?
Well, in terms of informal settlements, we have seen over 6,500 informal structures being affected, and that's just in the city of Cape Town area. But we've also seen impacts in terms of rural communities such as Glenwilliam and Citrusdal, but also in areas like Drakensberg, and also power disruptions in areas like Ceres and Wolseley. So, all this is contributed back to, the heavy winds, but also, the accompanying rain, and in some areas, also snow linked to this as well.
Are you worried? We've seen more warnings of rain in Cape Town, I think, this afternoon. Are you expecting more bad weather that could cause more damage to infrastructure?
Oh, yes, indeed. We have, and I did engage our provincial job this morning, and we might actually see the warning being increased by 1 or 2 levels due to the strength of the wind, and in some areas also the impact of flooding due to the amounts of rain that's actually pouring down in certain of our districts across the province. Indeed, I am very, very concerned. Although I do note in certain municipal areas, including the city of Cape Town, they do have a winter readiness program, which is actually limiting the massive impact on the flooding component, but the wind component part, one can never properly actually prepare for that.
Well, this comes to the next question. Trying to build infrastructure, protect infrastructure, have infrastructure that will actually survive incidents like this. Wind, as you've heard, going to become more and more of a problem, and building that kind of infrastructure is more and more expensive, MEC.
Oh, yes, no, indeed. Look, the Ashton Bridge is an example of where our engineering was future-focused, specifically focusing on climate change and how we adapt our infrastructure design for the future. We saw this, it actually stood the test of time last year with those floods, but indeed it is becoming more expensive, while from a national perspective, the budgets are getting less, and hence in the Western Cape, we are focusing on how do we bridge this shortfall of funding in terms of the grants we are getting, and how do we partner better with the private sector, being well aware that we need to actually future-proof our infrastructure design and construction, which also includes the branch human settlements component for the future.
Thank you very much indeed. Tertius Simmers is the Infrastructure MEC in the Western Cape. Well, just shows you how things are changing. As you heard from Professor Mitchley a moment ago, wind becoming more and more of a factor, the situation regarding the actual damage that we've seen in this weather in Cape Town becoming more of a factor. Really what we'll see over the next 24 hours, I think, is the impact of that. And let's just see how that all plays out. In the meantime, the rest of the country really in the grip of this cold. The people that I see in front of me wearing, I think, more jackets between them than I've ever seen since working out to start the show this morning with a beanie on my head. So yeah, it has been very, very cold. Going to be one of the major issues of the day. Meanwhile, in other places, major problems with fires. You heard earlier in KwaZulu-Natal, veld fire there. Also in Limpopo, Mpani, I understand, and the Free State. We'll get more of that in a little while. Your mediated conversation later, in about half an hour from now, we'll be looking at the issues facing mining in South Africa, and particularly with what government can do and what it can't do to try and resolve some of the problems that mining is experiencing. We'll hear from the government, we'll hear from the Minerals Council, we'll hear from analysts as well. You're with SAFM, leading the conversation. Good morning, it's 8 o'clock.
In our top stories, Mapisa Ngakula to appear in court on alleged corruption charges, and cold front brings heavy rain in the Northern Cape. Good morning. Former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula is expected to appear before the Pretoria Magistrates Court today on charges related to alleged corruption. It's expected to be a brief appearance as the state is expected to serve an indictment and enroll Mapisa-Nqakula's matter at the High Court. During her last appearance last month, the state indicated it would not be adding another accused in the matter. Mapisa-Nqakula is accused of soliciting about 4 million rand in bribes from a defence contractor during her tenure as Defence Minister. She faces 12 counts of corruption and 1 of money laundering. A 25-year-old man from Dikweteng village in Mpumalanga is expected to appear in the Danki periodical court today in connection with the alleged rape of a 77-year-old woman. Police say the suspect allegedly broke into the victim's house earlier this month and assaulted the elderly woman for 2 days. The victim is still in hospital receiving medical treatment. The suspect was out on bail for a similar incident in March. Heavy rains have led to flooding in some parts of the Northern Cape, including Hantam, Kamiesberg and Middelpos. Some residents around Hantam suffered severe damage to their properties and have been relocated to temporary accommodation. Strong winds also caused damage to telecommunications infrastructure, leaving some places without cell phone coverage. Spokesperson for the Department of Cooperative Governance is Babalwa Mzambo.
Currently, Kamiesberg is experiencing flooded roads and disrupted telecommunication services, while some families in Nantam have faced significant property damage, necessitating their relocation to Leni Skeppers Community Hall. In Middelpos, power outages persist and approximately 15 informal households in Kalfina have sustained damage. Buffelsrivier in Namakoi is experiencing flooded roads, prompting community members and road users to exercise caution and vigilance on the roads. Affected families have received temporary shelter and provisions, with ongoing assessments conducted by the Provincial Disaster Management Committee to extend further aid as required.
In Limpopo, firefighters have been battling 3 big fires and other small ones in Magubas Kloof in Georges Valley outside Zanin. Mopani District spokesperson Oda Sungoveni.
We've been working with other stakeholders to try and contain the fire. The fire is not fully contained. However, we can safely report now that we've managed to secure the houses. The teams will be reconvening early in the morning as led through the Joint Operations Center. In the meantime, we want to appeal to members of the public, especially the motorists driving through the Georges Valley Road, which is the R528, as well as the R71 Magubas Kloof Road, to drive with caution and report all emergencies on our Central Communications Center with 015-306-7000.
And finally, the UN Security Council will convene later today in an emergency session over a Russian missile attack that struck Kyiv's main children's hospital. Reports suggest Russia hit the hospital with a missile while raining missiles down on other cities across Ukraine, killing at least 36 civilians. Actions the UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has condemned. Shawan Bryce Peace reports.
A statement from the SG spokesperson said Guterres condemned the attacks by the Russian Federation that hit residential and civilian infrastructure across Ukraine, including the capital Kyiv, Dnipro and Pokrovsk. He referred to the incidents targeting medical facilities, including the strike on the Children's Hospital, which is the largest pediatrics facility in Ukraine, as particularly shocking. Guterres said that directing attacks against civilians and civilian objects was prohibited under international law, and that such attacks were unacceptable and must end immediately. Russia has denied targeting civilian infrastructure. Sherwin Brycepe's SABC News, New York.
Recapping the top story, former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula is expected to appear before the Pretoria Magistrates Court today on charges related to alleged corruption. For SAFM News, I am Anne Musa.
A very good morning to you. In your SFM sports headlines, it's soccer news with the younger chief, the president engineer, saying Kaizer Chiefs' newly appointed head coach is going to need a lot of support. And in rugby action today, we're all behind the junior box. It's a do or die game against England. We'll bring you these stories just before 8:30.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
This is important if you're avoiding the lane closures on the R21 at Clayville and you find yourself just moving across to Glen Avenue, the M19. The lights at Porcelain are down, and that's causing some real heavy backlogs. There's a lot of traffic on that route between Clayville and Irene, largely bypassing the R21 delays to and from the airport, and all of that traffic running into trouble there just north of Clayville. Crash delays on the N3 getting through Galulis this morning. It's a collision on the N12 just east of Galuli. So as you come off the N3 and want to turn out to the airport or Boxburg, that's all sort of bottlenecking. The N3 south from Modderfontein and north from Cement Factory, very heavy backlogging going on there. Durban's M4 inbound super slow this morning up through Congella and Umbilo, largely due to the extra volumes around today and the continuing closure of Brook Street, top of the M4 at the China Mall demolition. N2 south from Geta Road down to Spaghetti Junction being held by a breakdown in the roadworks. And Cape Town today, it is wet, it is windy, and everything's going slow. A crash at Dunoon causing delays both ways along the N7. The N1 inbound from Plattekloof Hill all the way to city centre is busy. Big congestion just north of the airport. Lights are down on 35th Avenue at Bishop Lavis. So Stellenbosch Arterial and Robert Sobukwe is badly backed up. And a collision heading south on the M3 to Cairo. So quite a delay as you line up from sort of Constantia side driving into that one. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
SAFM Sunrise. A vivid start to your day.
6 minutes after 8. Good morning. You're with SAFM Sunrise. I'm Stephen Grootes. I asked on Twitter this morning, where's the coldest place you'd been? I kind of know where the coldest place I've been. I'll give you a hint. It was not in South Africa. It was actually in Switzerland, in Davos. It was sort of minus 20 or so. Some of the responses, okay. Kiefer says New York, very cold. Couldn't wait to get back to South Africa. Voyo says Vanderbijl Park in the Vaal. Stephen, that place is cold, sir. It's unbelievable. Tlaisa says, my hometown, Welkom. Other people talking about that. Lamas, Bethlehem, the Free State. I once experienced minus 9. De Barnes saying roads outside Berkeley East in the Eastern Cape. That town's still called Roads. Tandiwe, you were in Montreal in Canada. It was minus 15. I have stepped into Canada once from the United States. Paul says, I lived in the south of Finland for a while. Minus 25 was the coldest it got. James Campbell, Yellowknife, Northwest Territories, Canada, minus 30 degrees Celsius. Glenn says it feels like minus 5 here. The Minister of Real Estate says just north of St. Petersburg in Russia on the Finnish Gulf, minus 35 degrees Celsius. That's not the coldest temperature that people on my Twitter timeline have recorded. Tian says, I'm still at the coldest place where I've ever been. It's never been colder where Tian is. He says, I'm still there. It's my wife's heart. Wow. He says, must be at least minus 100 degrees Celsius. But we still love each other. Hey, you've got a bit of melting there to do, Tian, from minus 100. The coldest place he's ever been is his wife's heart, and she's still his wife. Tian, your secret, but share, please. 8 minutes after 8.
Sakina, you know we are vindicated as the Patriotic Alliance because at local level, we have always said that the DA is very arrogant, is very rude, it wants to be the boss.
And this is very unsettling. If it's unsettling for us as politicians, it's also unsettling for the citizens. And you can actually feel the crispness in the air, Sakina, that the people are tense.
Deputy President Kenny Kunene, and we also have African Christian Democratic Party's spokesperson in Gauteng, Bishop Dalton Adams.
Sakina Kamwendo on SAFM. SAFM 104 to 107. Nationwide.
9 after 8, good morning. Well, while some parts of the country are battling wet weather and snow, in other parts, there are actually serious fires. Limpopo's Mpani district, there have been big fires there. Also a felt fire this week in the Queensmead area of KwaZulu-Natal. And then in the Free State, the provincial government reporting on felt fires there. This conversation is brought to you by the Free State Department of Agriculture, Rural Development and the Environment. The MEC in that department is Elzebia Rockman. MEC, good morning. Thanks for your time.
Good morning, and good morning to your listeners.
The veld fires in the Free State, they seem to have affected quite a few farms. What's actually happened?
I think our major problem from Sunday afternoon was in the Eastern Free State, the Clarence Bethlehem area, but there were also veld fires at Ehrenville, at Petrusburg, Harrismith, and some fires started at Kestel, and the Warden and Lindley roads were also affected.
Do we know what might have caused them? I mean, this time of year, cold in most places, very dry in your province, of course.
Yes, extremely cold, extremely dry. You know, fire is still a source of heat and a source of cooking. So at this stage, the cause of the fire is not yet known. But any unattended little ember can ignite the veld fires. What has made it worse is the extreme winds that we experienced, especially in the Bethlehem Clarence area. It just fueled the fires. So the focus from Sunday throughout the night was more on containment than trying to extinguish. Yesterday, throughout the day, the winds was terrible still. We were there at Clarence and at Bethlehem. But this morning, it seems the wind has finally started to settle down. So they can move forward now to look at extinguishing the remaining parts that are still burning.
And the damage, I mean, has it been extensive in some places?
Yes, very extensive. Yesterday morning when we got there, they were estimating at that time already about 8,000 hectares. And that is likely to, of course, increase because throughout the day yesterday, the fires were still continuing. Fortunately, we've had no reports of loss of life. There would be some livestock and game affected, and then obviously in the infrastructure on farms. And Clarence specifically is a tourist destination. We're aware, and we saw some of the lodges have lost accommodation units. So there will be some damage, but for the immediate, obviously people were focusing on trying to contain the fires. The assessment will only start happening towards maybe later today, the rest of the week.
And, I mean, your intervention, what do you do to try and help farmers? And obviously you don't want these fires to happen in the first place, but now that they have, are you able to help farmers?
Yes, I think the immediate assistance we would be looking at is to assist with provision of fodder for livestock and game. Obviously, the grazing land is significantly affected. And then we have asked the Farmers Association, the needs identification must come from them. Because our assistance must be relevant to that. It must speak to that and it must be timely. And it must be effective. So those would be, we are in constant communication with them. I think what was very heartwarming is the way in which they cooperate with one another, whether your farm is affected or not affected. It's really a team effort. Between the farmers, the farm workers, the working on fire people have been doing an extremely good job. So that was really heartwarming to see how people pull together in such an emergency to really try to help one another.
MEC, thank you very much indeed. MEC Elsie Rockman is the MEC for Agriculture, Rural Development and Environmental Affairs. That conversation brought to you by the Free State Department of Agriculture, Rural Development and the Environment.
At SFM Radio and at Stephen Grootes on Twitter.
Rex on the line from Leidenburg. Rex, hi, good morning, long time. Fires on commercial farms, go for it.
Yeah, I used to be chairman of the local fire association, so I know a little bit about this. Now, there are 3 golden rules when it comes to fires. One, every farm owner, every landowner, plot farmer, has to have fire breaks. Number 2, you have to join the local fire association so you can strategize and plan with the local farmers, you know, how to handle these fires. And number 3, you include the spread of wildfire in your public liability insurance. Okay, those are the 3 golden rules. Now, the problem is we've got very good laws with fires. They'll always prosecute the landowner. That's where they start prosecuting. But you cannot enforce the law because there is no law enforcement. The laws are good. Once you understand the laws are good. So if a fire starts on your farm and goes to the neighbor's farm, now even if the lightning started it, monkeys climbing into the power lines, with children playing with matches, they prosecute the landowner. If he doesn't have fire breaks, then he is guilty. It works pretty much the same way as drunken driving. If you have an accident under the influence of alcohol, then you are responsible for that accident, whether you caused it or not. And you can argue this point, or you can go to court and pay lawyers a lot of money to argue about how long a piece of string is. But the basic rule is every landowner has to have fire breaks. Now, with winds like this, fire breaks don't really help. But for normal run-of-the-mill fires, fire breaks do help. Now, I'm living in the grass field. Timber is completely different. Okay, the laws regarding the timber areas are completely different. But we need law enforcement from the government. Law enforcement forces everybody to make fire breaks, and that creates a lot of job opportunities. It's a lot of equipment. And this problem goes away. And most 90% of these problems will be solved if people just make fire breaks.
Are fire breaks expensive to do?
It takes time, and you get better and better and better at it. And a lot of these garden services have nothing to do in the autumn. It'll create a lot of job opportunities. All you need is police officer, a policeman, or the traffic department to go around with J534 spot fines. You got your fire break. If you haven't got your fire break, they give you a spot fine. It's like a flicker. If a traffic cop stops you for a flicker, he gives you a fine there. He doesn't go and open a case and come and investigate. Yeah. So the laws are good. They just got to get implemented, and nobody in government is interested in implementing these laws.
And does a normal police officer have the power to do that?
A policeman or a traffic officer.
So either of them. All right. Rex, thank you. That's really very helpful. I really appreciate that. Rex on the line from Leidenburg. Thank you. You can hear the voice of experience there talking about that. But yeah, very interesting. And also the importance of fire breaks. I mean, just clearly something that you need to sort of have. I mean, from what Rex says, I have heard people say that they play a vital role before. Bonakele on the line from Cape Town. Bonakele, good morning. Load shedding. Go for it.
Absolutely. Very good morning, Stephen. Yeah. You see, the elections have been and gone. There were a lot of criticism. I mean, the people who were saying it's because of how many days we don't have load shedding now.
Yeah.
So they're criticizing to say, now after the elections, load shedding is coming back. They're quiet now. I mean, if someone is doing very good, why don't they commend him and say, thanks very much for doing a good job. They're quiet now. They just criticize, this is absolutely nonsense. And the other point is this NK party withdrawing the case. Yeah, do they accept now the elections were free and fair? I'm
Jacob Zuma said on Sunday that they had an elephant of evidence, I think it was.
They have evidence. Why are they withdrawing? I mean, personally, I would really like to ask the IEC to sue that MK party to teach a lesson to other parties as well.
Sure.
People such as Jacob Zuma and others. I think from our job shop advise them to withdraw that. They're just making a lot of noise.
Yeah. All right. No, Bonakele in Cape Town. Thank you. Look, my understanding is the IEC may well ask the Electoral Court to continue with the case. I think they have the right to do that. Just while Bonakele is talking about Eskom, a statement from Eskom this morning saying that they are now implementing load reduction. They say this is as a result of the theft of electricity. So you're seeing in particular in various provinces that load reduction is being implemented in areas that Eskom actually control. So, for example, in Gauteng, they supply most of the electricity directly to Soweto. I'm presuming that would include Soweto as an example. So load reduction is still a major problem. Lefuno on the line from Midrand. The US President Joe Biden, should he pull out, Lefuno?
Morning to you, Brother Alvid.
I'm well, Lefuno. Go for it.
Yeah, I hope Joe Biden is going to lose the next USA election. Like the way it happened to Rugby Tsunaki. These people who went on their table, they forget that the voters decide. Voters in Rusak, they didn't appreciate the way they operate, they support Israel. So it's going to happen again in Israel. Donald Trump is going to win the election.
Yeah, Donald Trump supports Israel more than Biden does.
Yes, he's going to win. He's going to win that election.
Okay, all right. I think I understand what you're saying. All right, Lefuno, thank you on the line from Midrand. Very difficult situation emerging in the United States. 19 after 8.
Things people wish they knew about being parents and parenting. And some of the messages that we got were, listen, nobody told me that this is such an expensive exercise.
Yeah, very true, very true. So I think actually for us, I think as a nation,
savings is something that's very, very difficult for a lot of people. And taking into consideration all the things that are happening in the markets with interest rates and all the inflation coming into play. And also another thing, I think savings is a skill we need to master from a very, very young age. Just like that, with parents coming in, is that someone needs to tell you that kids are kind of expensive to bring onto earth and everything. So I think that's where conversation starts there, is that education around finances.
Musa Ngumalo, who's with Imbewu Financials.
The Full Circle with Bridget Masinga, Monday to Friday, 1 to 3 p.m. The Science of Life on SAFM.
20 after 8, good morning. Well, we've seen more and more cases of kidnapping for ransom. In other words, where someone is kidnapped and then held until money is paid. And there are different ways in which this happens. There's the sort of classic, I suppose you would call it, Hollywood style. Someone kidnaps a relative, holds that person, demands a ransom. What is more common, I think, there's a situation where they sometimes call it a short-term kidnapping. Someone actually essentially basically, takes a person captive, takes them to the ATM and demands that they withdraw money from the ATM. And this leads to a question around what happens in that case. If you're the victim of a financial crime, so if someone draws money from your account, the bank will often reimburse you. What happens in these cases? Wendy Nola is a consumer journalist, someone who's been in this field for a long time, very experienced. Wendy, good morning.
Morning, Stephen.
If you have to draw money under duress, so someone literally, I suppose, this is unfortunate, has a gun to your head, forces you to go to an ATM to draw money, you're basically doing it against your will. Is there a duty on the bank to refund you?
Unfortunately not, because any time that you give what the industry calls the keys to your safe, your PINs, your passwords, whatever allows somebody to access your account, even if it's under duress, even if it's because you fell for the line that somebody was phoning from your bank's fraud department and just read out these numbers, nobody's going to, very few people will willingly, of their own free will, do that. But the bottom line is, if it happens, if somebody gets their hands on your money because you enabled them, then they're not liable. And so I first started covering these cases around February, March of last year, and a lot of people understandably felt, well, I had a gun to my head. What was I supposed to do? I was literally kidnapped. They had a gun to my head. They took me to the ATM, or they had me open the banking app on my phone, and I was forced to do it. And even then, there's no compulsion legally on the banks to then say, oh, terribly sorry, we understand, here's your money back. In practice, I found in the cases that I was taking up, if it was a small amount, the banks tended to do that, but bigger amounts, not. And the banking ombudsman, now the banking division of the National Financial Ombuds Scheme, says if criminals knew that banks would roll over and pay back any amount that was taken from somebody's account at gunpoint under duress, then you imagine, the criminals would be doing this willy-nilly, thinking, well, I'm, not going to feel anything for this person because the bank's just going to give them all the money back.
I imagine it can go in lots of directions. There may be cases where someone is at an ATM and is obviously under duress, right? And the bank, that would be proven because there would actually be CCTV footage. There's usually a camera around an ATM somewhere if you look. So that would be one thing. Very different if I'm sitting at home and someone has me under duress there, and I'm on my phone. That's where it gets very complicated. I mean, and everybody who made any sort of payment wrongly, or any if they had regrets about a payment they made, they would claim they'd done it under duress.
Exactly. So this is very open to abuse, or setting up family members or friends to kind of kidnap you, in inverted commas. You can imagine, I mean, it's not to take anything away from those people who have fallen victim genuinely to this, and I've spoken to a few of them. It's a truly harrowing, traumatic experience. Never mind the loss of money, but bottom line, if the bank was not liable in any way in you losing that money, then generally they don't pay. They don't have to pay, but as I say, there have been some goodwill payments. The reason I wrote about this issue in the Business Times this week was because I had a case of a woman who this happened to. She was kidnapped, but she was in Sebokeng, and she was a street away from home dropping off some woman when she was kidnapped along with one of the women. It was very public. She was in the street. Her hazards were on at the time, and the kids in the neighborhood knew her and knew her family, so ran and informed the family. And long story short, the family informed her bank. In this case, it was Investec. Informed her bank of what had happened. So obviously they were saying, put a temporary hold on her account because this is what's going to happen. And the bank, first of all, made them go to the police and get a case number, which they did, delayed it a bit. And then they phoned back with a case number, and the bank said, well, we're not going to do this for the protection of our client. Because if the criminals then realize they can't get any account, they might take money from her account, they might take it out on her, and that might not end well. And she was furious to say, how dare they take that unilateral decision to do that? And the bank doesn't want to say too much because whatever they say, the criminals will know. But just to say this is, under discussion at very high level with, all the various stakeholders, and is going to be discussed next week by the banking division of the NFO. And I like to give consumer advice, Stephen, in such cases, but I don't know what the advice can be. Maybe, hopefully the Banking Association, the South African Banking Risk Information Centre, SABRIC, will come out on guidelines. But I'm thinking, I like to give positive advice. What can you do? But I mean, I'm sure all of us could think about being in such a position. We've got banking apps. If we haven't got a banking app, they can take us to the ATM, put a gun to our heads. What do you do?
Yes. Very, very tricky situation. Wendy Nolap, thank you on that point. It's such an important question. The consumer journalists, they really appreciate it. 27 after 8.
This is SAFM Sport with Zai Khan.
Zai, good morning. Kaizer Chiefs, not too late. I'm still available.
Well, they say this new guy by the name of Nazruddin Nabi is going to need like a bucky load of patience, some talent, and as well as support for Kaizer Chiefs. Now, this is from Young Africans president, engineer Hersi Sayed. The Tunisian-Belgian coach Nabi, he spent 2 years in Tanzania and won back-to-back league titles. He's currently at the Chiefs pre-season camp in Turkey with the rest of his technical team. Hersi says it's important that Nabi's project is supported by the signing of good players for it to succeed. Moving to the other Kaizer Chiefs story, and it's the Director of Marketing, Jessica Motong, saying high-level discussions are continuing with legendary goalkeeper Itumeleng Khune about his future role at the club. Amakosi held a celebratory event at the end of last season to thank Khune as one of their most decorated players, but his role at the club has not been fully clarified, and the relationship between Khune, who has indicated he wants to continue playing, and with the club, well, recently he said it has been tumultuous after he was suspended in December to attend a corrective program to meet set expectations for a professional athlete. Rugby, the junior Boks face a crucial win match against England tonight at Athlone Stadium in Cape Town. They need a bonus point victory by at least 13 points to stand a chance of progressing to the World Rugby Under-20 Championship semi-finals. Now, this challenge is compounded by needing Argentina to avoid thrashing Fiji. This scenario mirrors last year's tournament where the junior Boks found themselves in a similar situation, needing a decisive win in their final pool match. Some tennis action from Wimbledon. Barbara Krejcikova, she beat Danielle Collins in straight sets to qualify for the quarterfinals of Wimbledon. Yelena Ostapenko beating Yulia Putintseva in straight sets, also advancing to the quarterfinals. And in the men's draw, Lorenzo Musetti reaching his first Grand Slam quarterfinal by surging past the lucky loser Giovanni Impasci-Pericard, and Taylor Fritz coming from 2 sets down to beat Alexander Zverev on the 4th round at Wimbledon. And finally, cricket. The England cricket team is training at Lord's ahead of the first test against the West Indies. James Anderson will be playing his final test for England. He will retire after the test, having played 187 test matches and taken 700 wickets for England. England will play the West Indies from the 10th to the 14th of July at Lord's. And that's how we wrap up your sport on Sunrise. There'll be more sport on SFM around 12:30. I am Zai Khan.
Zai, thanks very much indeed. The state of our mining, that's next to you with SFM leading the conversation, 8:30.
Good morning. In the headlines, the mayoral committee member for human settlements in the city of Cape Town has pleaded with communities against illegal land invasions as the city cannot provide services in those areas. Former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula is expected to appear before the Pretoria Magistrates Court today on charges related to alleged corruption. And the National Council of Provinces will today consider the nomination of members to serve on the Judicial Service Commission, the SADC Parliamentary Forum, as well as the Magistrates Commission. I'll have details on these and other stories at 9.
SAFM, guiding you through the rush hour traffic.
Still slow on Joburg's N3 North today, just coming from Germiston up to Galulis. It's a crash as you ramp off the N3 onto the N12E. So there's a delay that's formed all the way back to Cement Factory area. The bike one's very heavy from Gold Reef City all the way to the Oxford Road exit in Parktown. That run up through Crown Interchange is pretty extreme this morning. N1 South coming through Midrand, still under a bit of pressure from Brockfontein all the way down to New Road. It's been fairly steadily backed up from about 6 o'clock this morning. Over in Durban, the N2 South is heavy. There's a queue between Inunda Road and Spaghetti Junction. It's a breakdown in the roadworks just before you get to 4 level. In Nunda Road over the N2 towards Seacow Lake, that's being held by some road construction. The roadworks here just on the Durban side of the N2. And the M4 inbound, the Southern Freeway, getting really quite badly caught up to that closure of Brook Street around the China Mall demolition site. The M4 is heavy going into the city centre from Umbilo and Congela. Cape Town, wet, windy and pretty wild this morning. Conditions not great at all. Make sure you got plenty of time to get through and get through safely. Don't want to be pushing too hard and too fast. There's a couple of crashes on Marine Drive at Milnerton, so it just shows you how easily things can go the wrong way in these sort of conditions. Coming out of Tableview, it is a heavy backlog. Also, crash on the M3 south at Tukai, causing a delay from Constantia, and no traffic lights on the M3 at Paradise Road in the Bishop's Court Newlands area, so some delays there. Also, Clarence Drive remaining closed until further notice. At this stage, it's still Sir Larry's Pass and Botfrafir, and then the R44 via Kleinmont as the alternative route. Rob Byrne, SAFM Traffic.
TV licenses have developed a new GIS-linked national address database to ensure that we can communicate with all our valued license holders. We now have a visual of all licensed and unlicensed households nationwide in order to effectively communicate with you. We remind you to take note of our payment reminders and avoid paying penalties due to non-compliance or choosing to ignore your legal obligation to pay your license fees. We can communicate with all our license holders through cost-effective electronic methods, enabling us to collect license fees and continue to support the national broadcaster, the SABC, in accordance with Section 27 of the Broadcasting Act No. 4 of 1999 as amended. TV licenses. Pay yours. Make a difference.
EFC is live this Thursday. One of the greatest mixed martial artists of Africa returns to the World Sports Betting Arena. Iga Smiley Kabesa has cemented his legacy in the record books as the Continental GOAT. Now he puts his lightweight title on the line against Humphrey King Cobra Malenga. EFC 115 live this Thursday. Watch it on SABC Sport Channel and DTT Channel 4 from 7 p.m. Brought to you by SABC Sport.
Mediated conversation on SAFM.
26 minutes to 9. Good morning. Time for your mediated conversation this morning. With the new government coming into office, Gwede Mantashe will serve another term as the Minister of Mineral Resources. But this sector of our economy is facing a series of problems. Some mining companies have said they're retrenching workers because they're not making a profit. A big part of this is the lack of demand for some of our products. Platinum prices, in particular, have dropped dramatically over the last 2 years. But there are also other problems in the sector. One of the reasons reasons some coal mines say they will retrench workers is that when coal prices are high, they cannot transport enough coal to Richards Bay because Transnet has not run its train network properly. And earlier this year it emerged that in a single financial year, the Department of Mineral Resources did not approve a single mining application because its cadastral system, which tells people which companies have the right to mine where, it's a mineral resources map if you like, was not working properly. So then what are the problems in mining, and is there scope now for them to be fixed? First this morning, the CEO of the Minerals Council representing the mining companies, Mzila Mthenjane. Then, some of the other problems that we have. Peter Major is a mining analyst and director of mining at Modern Corporate Solutions. Tsaliso Makobela is the deputy director general in the Department for Mineral and Petroleum Regulation in the Department of Mineral Resources, and Frans Beleni, an expert on mining, former general secretary of the National Union of Mine Workers. We start then with the CEO of the Minerals Council, Mzila Mthenjane. Mzila, good morning and thanks for your time this morning.
Good morning, Stephen. Thanks for having me.
We see headlines about mining companies, and particularly at the moment, platinum miners retrenching workers. What's happening underneath that? Is it just lower demand, or are there real problems in our mining sector?
I think given where we are today, it's really largely a function of where the market is. But where the market is aggravating a situation that developed, a couple of years ago in terms of the challenges with electricity infrastructure and the constraints that it was posing on the ability of platinum companies to produce. And if you look at the extent to which prices have come down, that means that, platinum producers are sitting with significant overcapacity and unable to generate the revenues sufficient to maintain that. And so they've then had to reposition and resize to be where the market is, and just reposition for a future when this market will turn around, or they will establish new ways of working to be able to continue to operate under these new conditions.
Some of the big problems, electricity supply, we know there hasn't been load shedding. There's been more investment by mines in their own power production. We've seen changes at Transnet on the railways and at the ports. Is that making a difference?
I think it's been encouraging, the progress we've been seeing on the electricity side, and more than 100 days without load shedding. I was fortunate to have had a meeting with the CEO of Eskom recently, and I think this will continue. I think going forward, it's likely that I think electricity supply will be less an issue and more electricity cost, which is something that will affect the competitiveness of the mining industry. So that is something to look out for. From a logistics perspective, I think we still have some tracks to cover there, to coin a pun. And that is affecting a much larger proportion of mining in terms of your bulks. And so, work continues in that area for improvements with Transnet on both the ports and the rail.
The issues with the cadastral system, how big a problem has that been?
It has been a big challenge. It's really and foremost about transparency. If you think of exploration, it's really sinking money into the ground, but you want to be certain that there's a chance of a return on that investment. And so to the extent that you're not certain as to where you are possibly going to explore, that is viable territory from a surface access, from a security of ownership of those mining rights, it becomes difficult to invest as much money as is required in exploration. And so the delays that we've seen with the cadastral system has really been concerning. We were pleased that finally a service provider was put in place earlier this year. But what now we're looking for as an industry is really to be included in the process in terms of what is the progress being made and how quickly are we going to get to a point where the cadastral system is operating. We have an industry that is really has huge potential. We need to turn that potential into performance over and above fixing what the current challenges are facing the current operators.
Are there other things you believe government could do to turn that into performance, to basically help the sector to grow and employ more people?
Absolutely. So we've said as a Minerals Council that I think it's great that we've got some traction now on the cadastral system. But what remains important, as we're getting that in place, are things like how firstly, I've said it myself that the mining industry needs to be seen as a key catalyst to the economy, and therefore it needs to be placed as amongst the top drivers of the economy. And so government, in terms of the different departments, needs to work together in terms of how they unlock the current constraints to mining industry. And by that, I mean not only the DMRE, but also Department of Water and Sanitation, Department of Fisheries, Forestry and Environment, COGTA in terms of municipalities. These departments need to really be aligned in terms of how do they place mining at the top of the list as a key sector with low-hanging fruits and a significant multiplier effect, both economically and socially, to be able to enable the mining industry to perform. And then obviously the DTI as well. So it needs to be a whole government approach to stimulating the mining industry.
Mzile Mthenjane, thanks very much indeed. CEO at the Minerals Council. You're with SAFM, 20 minutes now to 9. Continue your mediated conversation around the situation in mining. Peter Major is a mining analyst and director of mining at Modern Corporate Solutions. Peter, good morning. Thanks for your time.
You bet, Steve. Anytime.
The mineral rights system that government uses, so the cadastral system, it's a map of mineral rights, and without it, no one knows who has the right to mine where. Was Mzile Mthenjane being a bit diplomatic? How big a problem has that been?
Look, it's been a huge problem. We were ready to launch one back in 2000, and then the ANC decided to implement the MPRDA, so they told everyone who'd been working on the cadastre that was going to be world-class, world-leading. No, hold on, guys. You're getting ahead of it. We're having a big change in mineral rights, mineral holdings. We're going to revamp Geoscience Center. We're going to revamp the DMR. So you just hold back on that. So it was held back. But now that we look at it, we say, gee, that's almost intentional because that was over 22 years ago. So until 2000, we were still leading edge and we were world class in almost all respects. But it's like there's been an intention to hold us back, let the rest of the world get a hold of us. And yeah, instead of having a clear, transparent cadastre system leading the world in 2002, 2003, we've decided to do nothing on a cadastre until this last minute under huge pressure. And then we're still not getting an established proven one. We're going to try and build one from scratch, and we're using 2 different suppliers, and it's being coordinated by the DMR. So it's like there's more stalling here. But that's more of a reflection of the overall state of our mining and mining legislation rather than the main problem. But it is a big problem because it scares people when they don't know what's going on. Why don't we have transparency? How come we can't find out easily who has some property next to us?
Okay, so you talk about that's not the main problem. Then what for you is the main problem? Has it just become too difficult to mine?
Yes, it's become way too difficult to mine in this country. It used to be the easiest country to mine in, possibly one of the easiest countries to make a return on investment. Now it's a very, very difficult country to make a return on investment. So there's 199 other countries that prove more popular. And some of them are the DRC, Kenya, Zambia, and we know those countries don't have the infrastructure and the history we do, and yet foreigners seem to think there's a lot easier chance of making a return on investment there than here. So if you can't get foreigners interested in bringing money here, you can't build a mining industry without foreign investment. In fact, you can't build an economy without foreign investment. Just ask China. They took in probably a third to half of the world's investment the last 40 years, and that's why they're so big, rich, and strong now.
What's making it difficult for mines to, why would a mine go to the DRC and not come here? What is it? Is it about too much legislation, too much red tape? Is it about labor?
Oh, yeah. You could go down the list, Steve. It all adds up. First of all, you got this thing called BEE. So whatever you do here, you only get 70%. You have to finance somebody you don't even know who might not have any background in mining. Now he gets 30% and you're carrying the load. Then you start this mine. You can't purchase from the best suppliers or someone you know and trust. 70% of your purchases have to fill certain criteria that's given to you by somebody that doesn't even know how to mine. We had a real successful world-class mining industry, and instead we're trying to build some convoluted industry that everybody in government has their own idea how we can do it. So you've just seen how many times the NPRDA has been relaunched and then launched again and then tinkered with, 3,000 policy changes, 2,000 pieces of legislation. I want to find one person who can follow 10 commandments, let alone 2,000 commandments. So yeah, it's complicated. It's risky. It's proven not to give very good competitive returns now. It's very hard to make a return on investment here. So money doesn't want to come in.
Okay. So then are we just, is the situation going to continue for another 5 years, do you think?
If we don't start doing a lot right, and that means a lot of dramatic, I don't want to call them radical changes, but just back to basics. If a guy invests $1, he should get $1. If a guy's creating jobs, isn't that helping? If a mining company is paying taxes, so why did we have to change everything when we had a real successful industry and we changed everything at once? We're always wary of a mining investment like Northam originally was. Not only were they going twice as deep as any other platinum mine, but they were going to use hydropower. And they were going to use LHDs underground. And, that just compounds it. Every time you change something on a space shuttle, changing one thing is risky. Changing 2 or 3 or 4 things, we've just changed everything in mining, and it was almost everybody's fantasy. You had all these politicians with no experience in business, let alone mining, and now they're rewriting it, and they took away all the mineral rights from private ownership. They gave it to the state. But if you're a traditional homeland, then maybe you do get your mineral rights back. Or if you're a village that protests enough, well, maybe you can have it. Or if you're a traditional leader. So nothing really even stays as it's written. Everything seems to be fluid. Everything's not solid. It's not well thought out. It's not proven. We've done very little here that's been proven to work. And yet we keep up the things that are proven not to work. It's like there's no intention to grow industry and to create jobs. You just don't see it in anybody in government. They're not doing the easy, basic things that have proven to work in creating jobs and making a mine profitable. And a profitable mine pays lots of taxes, hires lots of people, is good for the community, good for the government. Unprofitable companies are unstable. They don't expand. They retrench, and I could go on and on.
No, sure.
Sorry.
Peter, thank you. Peter Major, really appreciate it. Director of Mining at Modern Corporate Solutions and a mining analyst. You with SAFM. 13 minutes to 9. All right. That's sort of the critique. Let's hear now from the Department of Mineral Resources. The Deputy Director General for Mineral and Petroleum Regulation is Taliso Makobela. Taliso, good morning and thanks for your time. Taliso, good morning. Are you there?
I'm here. I don't know if I'm...
Yes, no, we can hear you now. Sorry, my mistake. Okay. Taliso, good morning to you. You've heard a very sharp critique there from Peter Major. How do you respond? Is it too difficult to mine in South Africa?
Well, first of all, I think Peter, we read the article that he penned on Business Times. Very unfortunate article because you cannot use, the use of cancer, particularly the most, painful of cancers, as a metaphor to describe what's happening was very unfortunate. This sector, employs, close on 470,000 people. We think that it is a viable sector. Yes, we were not without challenges. We know that we've had challenges of logistics, we've had challenges of electricity, as Zila has said earlier on. We do have our own challenges in the department, in the sense that there is a view that we're not transparent, and the cadastral system that we just procured is aimed at doing exactly that. But I think it was wrong to expect that we would choose with a procurement system in the country that's transparent, and the Canadians came up tops in terms of that procurement system. And they have chosen to work with local partners. There's nothing wrong with that.
But it took a very long time. I mean, a very long time. It was clear for a long time that the other system wasn't working, and we still don't have the new system working. And isn't speed of the essence? I mean, where's the urgency, Tseliso? That's what I'm looking for.
Okay. The agency is there, Stephen, and again, we're not telling the whole truth, because if we look at an example that they like using, Peter and others, Botswana, from the time that they signed with the service provider, it took 13 months to go live. This is not because you have to customize, the system to the existing legislation in the country. So that doesn't happen overnight. And we're hard at work. I mean, after this meeting, we are having, after this interview, we're having a whole day workshop. The service provider is here with a team of 13 people that are stationed in the department trying to get this thing going. So there is work being done. It's just that people refuse to accept that things have changed. I want to also address the issue of Zambia and DRC and so on. The interest in those countries is so high because they have an abundance of battery minerals. And that's where the world is going. And there are companies in this country that are trying to get us in that direction, your Orion, your Copper 360. And those are licensed companies, and they are hard at work to also revive our copper industry.
The other point that is made is that policy changes too often. Nothing is certain. And in mining, this matters. You go from deciding you want to mine in an area to getting any money out. You're looking at 10 years, probably more than that. So certainty really matters. How do you respond to that? The idea that policy and legislation change too often and too quickly with regard to mining in South Africa.
So I think there's something that has not been communicated, and I don't know why. When the minister started in 2018, he said he issued a policy statement, and which has been implemented, to say that for prospecting, for example, we don't need to require a company to have a BEE partner. I mean, that was a significant policy change, and the industry knows that that is the case. But again, that is an enabler. And we believe that people should have taken advantage of that and, come into the sector. Now, the issue of licenses that have not been processed, for example, the AG, the Auditor General, is reviewing our books now. And we've said in our annual report that we've processed over 2,900 applications in the last financial year. The AG will show South Africans that this thing of that 0 applications were processed is wrong. And we just cannot continue to mislead, investors, because they then don't get attracted because they believe all these stories that are being told.
It came from an answer to a parliamentary question. It came from your department.
Yes, but that answer was to a specific question. It was to a specific question, and that question was about mining rights. And mining rights, you don't issue a mining right over a period of 6 months, because a person still, once it's accepted, must do an EIA. An EIA doesn't take 6 months, doesn't take 11 months, doesn't take 12 months. There are studies that have to be done, specialist studies. And the industry, again, knows this, but we tend to ignore it, and I don't know why.
Tseliso, very quickly, do you want foreign investment? As the department, do you want foreign investment in mining in South Africa?
We want foreign investment in South Africa, and foreign investors, are coming into our country. There's a difference, though. Most of the investment that's coming through is coming through from the East, from East Asia. And perhaps it's not visible because some of those companies are not listed, but there is investment coming into this country, particularly in the Northern Cape.
So do you believe then that mining is going to employ more people than it does now? We've seen retrenchments. Do you believe mining is going to grow in South Africa?
Well, firstly, I think with the platinum group metals, there's been a change brought about by, technology changes globally, where, some of the metals are not required in the quantities that they were. So we are seeing some changes there. However, we are firmly of the view that this sector is going to grow. We're going to create more jobs, perhaps in different provinces than we have seen recently.
Tseliso Makolbera, thank you very much indeed. Deputy Director General for Mineral and, for the moment, Mineral and Petroleum Regulation in the Department of Mineral Resources. You with SFM. We've apologised to Rob. We're not going to have time for traffic this morning, Rob. Sorry about that. 5 minutes to 9. Continue your mediated conversation this morning around our mining sector. Frans Beleni is a former mining unionist, an expert on many aspects of mining. France, good morning.
Good morning, Stephen, and to the panelists and to SFM listeners.
Do you believe our mining sector will ever grow again? And this is really the key question. I mean, it used to employ so many people, was so important for our economy. It's been declining. Do you think it can start to get bigger again?
I still believe mining is a sunrise, Stephen. It will grow, but at a different shape. We've got critical minerals. We are uncovering rare elements. There are still a lot of deposits, but it's going to be a totally different mine as compared to the traditional mine. It's going to be highly mechanized. But I'm worried, Stephen, about lack of exploration, because mining will only grow when there's a pipeline insofar as exploration is concerned.
Will it still employ as many people as it did? I mean, the traditional mine that we sort of think of in South Africa is coal or platinum or gold, of course, people going underground, hacking at it. Is this mining going to be different? The real question is, will it employ as many people in that way? I mean, one mine worker, the figure used to be supports 9 people. I think it's higher now.
Definitely not, Stephen. If you look at one of the future mine, Golfers, South Deep, is highly mechanized. It will never employ thousands as gold mines used to employ. I work in a mine where we have 60,000 employees in one mine with different shafts. Definitely the future mines are going to employ less people.
And then what's the best way for us to encourage mining as South Africa, as government? Do you think government is moving as quickly as it should? This cadastral system has surely made life a lot more difficult than it could have been.
I think hearing in the Mining Indaba platform, which I'm serving in, Stephen, the department need to step up its capabilities, bring about efficiencies. There's a slow motion in the department, and I hear what the DDG has just said, but I don't think that the excuse makes sense. I think they can do more.
I'm a little surprised in a way, France, because, I mean, you will know the current minister fairly well. You were once in the same union. Do you think he maybe needs to encourage a little more action from the department more quickly?
I said to the minister when he introduced the new system, introducing a new system and have capable people to operationalize that system is 2 different things. So you don't just procure. You need warm bodies to manage, to load the data, to process the data, and I think they miss that step. Maybe it's only now that they're starting. And I'm being critical to the minister, I know very well, and I think he does listen, and I think he can step up.
France, the other question, of course, when we look at the situation around mining, is that it seems to be becoming less and less important to our economy. And yet, the shape of mining is changing. What people want is changing. And it's going to all be probably around issues to do with energy and electricity. So we're looking at battery products, things like that. Is there really much of a future for us there? I mean, in some strange ways, the mining of sand, which is not really mining, but may have some similarities, suddenly could become very important for solar panels, for example.
The future is still bright, Stephen. If you look at now, the gold price is at a record high. And the opportunity there, if you lose your deep mine, you can then do the mining dumps. That's a good future. What we need to deal with is the poor infrastructure. We spoke about power. Rail is a challenge. Water is a challenge. Once we address that, obvious regulation, delays in licensing, approval in the environmental and water affairs and all those things, we can turn mining around in South Africa. With the discoveries we've seen, especially critical minerals, if you take, for example, coal, Stephen, we can produce rare elements. We can produce ammonia, which is friendly into as environment is concerned.
Frans Peleni, thanks very much indeed. Former mining unionist, and as you can hear, a part of the industry. Really do appreciate the time. My thanks also to Saliso Makobela, the Deputy Director General in the Department of Mineral and Petroleum Regulation in the Department of Mineral Resources, for Peter Majors, the Director for Mining at Modern Corporate Solutions, and Mzila Mtinjani, starting us off today, the CEO at the Minerals Council. Well, thanks very much indeed for being with us this morning. We will be back tomorrow. From Melissa, from Stanza, from Zelma, Mdu, myself, look after yourself. You're with SFM leading the conversation. It's 9 o'clock.
In our top stories, City of Cape Town's appeal to communities on land invasion, and Mapisa Ngakula to appear in court on alleged corruption charges. Good morning. The mayoral committee member for human settlements in the city of Cape Town has pleaded with communities against illegal land invasions, as the city cannot provide services in those areas. Carl Popheim says the areas are not suitable for human habitation. He says most of the flooded communities in this current inclement weather conditions are informal settlements.
Where we find these disasters and this inclement weather to affect the most is in communities that are flood prone, that are low lying, and that have high flood plains. And so whether it is me or anyone else governing the city, we will never be able to deliver the services that are needed in those communities because of the terrain. So particularly for me as an MMC, it's to call on those who encourage land invasions illegally to stop. You are threatening people's lives, you are threatening people's livelihoods, and people deserve dignity where they reside.
KwaZulu-Natal Transport and Human Settlements Department says a number of interventions will be speeded up to assist residents affected by recent wildfires. Wildfires were reported in the province yesterday, resulting in widespread destruction. Scores of people have been displaced. The department reported it received preliminary and incomplete information regarding the destruction of homes in multiple areas. Departmental spokesperson Ndaba Zintle CBS says the MEC assigned a team led by the head of department to obtain more information on affected areas.
There are quite a number of interventions that will be speeded up. For instance, the emergency housing unit within the Department of Human Settlement nationally will actually be working with the province to ensure that there are emergency interventions that are speeded up. There is also an indication that there are alternative houses using the latest technology that must be brought into the area to the affected communities.
A 29-year-old man has handed himself over to police in Limpopo after allegedly fatally stabbing his brother. Police spokesperson Malisela Lidwaba says the brothers had an argument before the stabbing. Lidwaba says the injured brother was taken to hospital where he succumbed to injuries.
The brothers then engaged in a heated argument whereby in the process the elder brother was stabbed with a sharp instrument. Their mother went to separate them, but already the victim was stabbed and bleeding. They quickly rushed him to local hospital, but unfortunately he later succumbed to his injuries. The police were notified about the incident. They arrived at the scene and opened a case of murder. The suspect had already fled. The following day, the suspect handed himself to police in Tin Mine.
Former National Assembly Speaker Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula is expected to appear before the Pretoria Magistrates Court today on charges related to alleged corruption. It's expected to be a brief appearance as the state is expected to serve an indictment and enroll Mapisa Ngakula's matter at the High Court. During her last appearance last month, the state indicated it would not be adding another accused in the matter. Mapisa Ngakula is accused of soliciting about 4 million rand in bribes from a defence contractor during her tenure as Defence Minister. She faces 12 counts of corruption and 1 of money laundering. The National Council of Provinces will today consider the nomination of members to serve on the Judicial Services Commission, the SADC Parliamentary Forum, as well as the Magistrates Commission. The NCOP will also elect its permanent deputy chairperson today. Parliament will this week also elect chairpersons of committees of the National Assembly and the National Council of Provinces. The National Assembly will also elect 3 House chairpersons. The election of chairpersons will precede the tabling of budget votes by all the departments. Further afield, and finally, a day of mourning is being observed in Ukraine after one of the worst waves of Russian missile strikes in months, with at least 41 people killed and 166 injured. The main children's hospital in the capital, Kyiv, was among buildings hit in cities across the country yesterday. 2 people died when a missile flattened part of the children's hospital, Ukraine's biggest pediatrics facility. A search for survivors beneath the rubble continues. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called the attack brutal and described his Russian counterpart, Vladimir Putin, as a bloody criminal. Recapping